Lydia's voice was calm and firm. I'm sorry, Your Grace. I cannot be your exclusive trainer. Duke Alberant sat in an armchair, a low table between them. He lifted his teacup, his gaze sharp. Why? Lydia's gaze did not waver. She looked straight at him. Duke Alberant set down his teacup with a crisp sound. Is the salary too low? Or are the conditions not to your liking? Lydia looked down at her proud hands, remaining silent. Duke Alberant leaned forward. If there's anything lacking, I can adjust the terms to satisfy you. Lydia's thoughts drifted. A charming face, a persuasive voice. Moreover, he was a duke. So perfect he seemed unreal. If this were a comic or a novel, he would undoubtedly be the male lead. This is trouble. I'm the first trainer Carson doesn't hate. But I have no idea what kind of world this is. She took a deep breath. I'm sorry. I must refuse. Just like in my past life, I just want to be a nobody to live a long and quiet life. I must stay away from main character types like him. 5 years ago, I started remembering my past life. For a while after I first remembered, I wondered if this was the world and novel I had read in my past life. If I were the main character, would things be different? I once had hope, but reality is cruel. I'm just a poor orphan. Yes, that was just the dream of an ignorant child. I'm very lucky. I met the dean of the orphanage, a warm and kind person. The dean treated me like her own daughter. I also grew up with a group of mischievous yet adorable younger brothers and sisters. It's been 5 years since I remembered my past life. Lydia's hand picked up a basket of fruit. Let's go. She pushed a small cart full of fruit along the stone path. I'm a dragon trainer now, working at the Dragon Training Center. Lydia smiled and walked towards an enclosure. Come here, my little cutie. A young, snow-white dragon responded with a low growl. Dragons in a fantasy world. In my past life, I was obsessed with all kinds of fantasy creatures. Lydia gently hugged the white dragon's neck. Did you sleep well? In this world, dragons are a part of daily life. They are sometimes livestock, sometimes weapons, and sometimes beloved pets. Dragons play various roles here. And as a dragon trainer who works with them, how can I not love this job? Of course, this doesn't mean all dragons are docile. Some breathe fire, some can fly, and some swim in the water. Each species has its unique powers and habits. They can easily crush buildings to dust. What chance do humans have? The white dragon nuzzled its head against Lydia's arm, letting out a wheedling growl. Lydia sat down with a broom. So for dragons and humans to coexist peacefully, training isn't an option, it's a necessity. Lydia finished sweeping the courtyard. She allowed a long breath. Finally done, she smiled and beckoned. Come here. The white dragon, Rudel, turned its back to her, its tail flicking impatiently. Lydia crossed her arms, a smile playing on her lips. I have snacks. You don't want any? Rudel's ears perked up abruptly. Lydia clasped her hands behind her head, a leisurely look on her face. I was going to reward you for being so quiet while I was cleaning. But if you don't want it, then forget it. Rudel trotted over. He nuzzled his head against Lydia's leg, purring to curry favor. Lydia's heart was struck. So cute. She crouched down and offered a treat. This is a reward for waiting patiently. Rudel opened his mouth and let out a happy roar. Cleaning's done. Time to eat. Watching the white dragon eat with gusto, Lydia smiled in satisfaction. You look healthy today, too. When he first arrived, he even refused to eat. Now, the next step is to see how he adapts to riding training. An urgent voice called from a distance. Trainer Lydia. Lydia whipped her head around. What happened? A young dragon trainer apprentice ran up, panting. His face was tear-streaked. Help! The rock armor dragon. Trainer Thompson's dragon is going berserk. Lydia's expression darkened. That bastard again. Rock armor dragons. Their bodies are covered in hard, rock-like, dark gray scales. Plants grow on their backs, looking like a soft moss carpet. They are huge, but usually slow-moving and gentle-natured. At least, that's the rumor. A rock armor dragon with bloodshot eyes opened its massive jaws and let out a deafening roar. Thompson was trembling with fear. A man roared, "Do something, Thompson. You're its trainer." Thompson shrieked in terror. You want me to get close to it while it's rampaging? A claw landed on the ground. Lydia dismounted from Rudel. Her eyes were cold as she faced the enraged rock armor dragon. Thompson glared at her. Who called her here? The man said, "You idiot." Someone obviously called her because you couldn't handle it. Thompson was furious. How dare you? Lydia cut him off coldly. Quiet. Do you want to agitate him more? Thompson was speechless. What? You little. He grabbed Lydia by the collar. Lydia said coldly, "Can you handle it?" Thompson froze. What? Lydia forcefully shook him off. Then I'll have to proceed with my training plan. The man watched her back in astonishment. He hurriedly shouted, "Wait." The rock armor dragon raised its front claws high, preparing to smash the tiny human. Lydia's pupils contracted. No way. The rock armor dragon's giant claw swung down fiercely. The claw whistled through the air as it descended. Dust flew everywhere. Lydia smiled and opened a hand. A ball of moss lay in her palm. Good boy, she soothed softly. I'm not here to hurt you. The rock armor dragon looked down at her, the rage in its eyes gradually fading. Lydia placed the moss ball on the ground and gently pushed it towards the dragon. The moss ball rolled to a stop in front of the rock armor dragon's claws. Lydia's gaze was gentle and firm as she stared at the giant beast before her. She gently stroked the rock armor dragon's skin, murmuring soothingly, "That's right. Good boy. I'll help you take out the thing that's hurting you. She looked at the rock armor dragon's back. Just as I thought. A foreign object was embedded deep inside. No wonder it hurts so much. It's okay. Just hold on a little longer. The two men at the side stared at Lydia. She pulled out the foreign object with a sudden, forceful tug. The rock armor dragon let out a painful cry, its tail whipping violently. Lydia was thrown hard to the ground. Her colleagues rushed over. Are you okay? Lydia held the foreign object. It was because of this. This is a young grass seed, isn't it? Aren't these supposed to be cleaned out regularly? But it was still in there. Thompson's face turned pale, his body stiff. He glared at the young man beside him. Rick, get over here, you idiot. He kicked Rick with a loud thud. You didn't manage your dragon properly. Rick trembled. I'm sorry. Thompson's fists were clenched. Lydia looked at him. That's enough. Trainer Thompson, apprentices learn under their seniors. It's inevitable they'll make mistakes. But why don't they even know the most basic care procedures? The young grass seeds on a rock armor dragon's back must be removed. Thompson averted his gaze. What are you trying to say? Lydia's voice was icy. If you don't understand, shall I say it again? The person who put a saddle on the dragon, but allowed such a basic mistake to happen, causing it to go berserk. Lydia advanced on Thompson, her finger nearly poking his chest. That is you. Thompson's face flushed red. He lunged at her, letting out a hysterical roar. The roar of the Yasha Training Center's director shook the entire office. Lydia, how dare you let things get to this point? Lydia replied calmly. Aside from stopping the rock armor dragon's rampage, I don't believe I did anything wrong. The director was furious. That was clearly your responsibility. Lydia stood with her hands on her hips, her gaze unwavering. The designated trainer was also present. Are you saying I should have interfered? The director's anger subsided, replaced by a cold warning. Some situations are unavoidable. Count Harris is behind Thompson. He provides a huge amount of funding for the Yasha Training Center. You haven't forgotten that, have you? If you don't want to be fired, you'd better watch what you say and do. You should also think about the orphanage. Lydia clenched her jaw, her nails digging deep into her palms. The director's voice echoed in her ears. We tolerate your insolence because of your outstanding abilities. The director's threat still ringing in her ears. If you want to leave the training center, whose recommendation will you need? I don't think I need to remind you. Lydia lowered her head, swallowed by the shadows. She said nothing, her fists clenched so tightly her knuckles turned white. These damn bastards. Even with memories of my past life, coming to this fantasy world, life doesn't seem any different. Lydia stood alone on the balcony, looking at the training center. Fantasy is just fantasy. Reality is still reality. The only thing I'm good at is training dragons. Because of that, I was lucky enough to find a job at the Empire-run Yasha Training Center. But Lydia stopped walking. Even at the Empire's largest training center, Yasha, the same problems exist. From the beginning, they only took in docile dragons and trained them easily, just to boost their own reputation. Thompson complained about Lydia to a colleague next to him. That girl is such a pain. Just because her training skills are a little better, she's always so arrogant. Honestly, don't you doubt if her skills are really that good? Who knows? Maybe she just uses that pretty face to seduce clients. Lydia's figure stood alone. How despicable and disgusting. When I think of the children at the orphanage, I can't just leave this place. A nobleman exclaimed in admiration, "Oh, Trainer Lydia, well done. I can't believe he's so obedient. It's incredible. Did you use some kind of magic?" Count Walbart hugged Rudel tightly. Rudel let out a displeased growl. Lydia smiled. You flatter me, Count Walbart. If possible, I suggest you stay a few more days to bond with Rudel. Because you've been separated for training for too long, he seems a bit distant with you. Count Walbart sighed. I'll follow Trainer Lydia's advice. Unfortunately, I really can't spare the time. He looked at his dragon with satisfaction. Seeing Rudel's condition, I know he's been cared for with the utmost dedication. I'm very happy. Lydia gently stroked Rudel's neck. It's just my duty as a trainer. Count Walbart cleared his throat. That being said, Trainer Lydia, I can grant you any wish. Would you consider becoming our family's exclusive trainer? Lydia smiled and waved her hand. I'm very sorry, Count. I still have much to learn, so I plan to remain at the Yasha Training Center. Count Walbart sighed. What a shame. I understand. If you change your mind, you can contact me anytime. Lydia bowed her head. Thank you for your kind offer. Rudel abruptly raised its head and let out a sharp roar. Its whole body tensed as it bellowed towards the distance. A low echo returned from afar, vibrating the air. Lydia looked towards the source of the sound. What is that? She soothed the agitated white dragon. Calm down, Rudel. Count Walbart nervously covered his eyes. Trainer Lydia, what is that? Lydia's gaze pierced through the woods. I've only heard rumors. That an extremely rare species that, in its long history, has only ever chosen one family as its partner. It seems Duke Alberant has arrived. Duke Alberant took the document, his eyes scanning the pages. I heard this is the best training center in the Empire, so I came to see for myself. The director stood nervously, leaning forward slightly. Yes, we pride ourselves on our our skills. Duke Alberant sat behind the desk, scrutinizing the document. Since you're so confident, I'd like to entrust you with the training of a dragon. The director was overjoyed, rubbing his hands together in excitement. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He smiled fawningly. Are you referring to training the dragons of the ducal family's Knight Order? Duke Alberant's voice came through. I'm talking about my dragon. The director's smile froze on his face, his pupils contracting in horror. He stammered, do you mean you're a Grix dragon? Duke Alberant's fingers tapped the desk. Yes, to be more precise, I'm looking for someone qualified to be my exclusive trainer. The director looked troubled, but that could have a negative impact on the Duke's dragon. We can't ignore the possibility of it developing an aversion to the trainer. Wait, what about the ducal family's own exclusive trainer? Is there no one besides the Duke himself who can handle that dragon? Even if a qualified person appears. Cold sweat beaded on the director's forehead. Duke Alberant's voice was firm. If that's the problem, then your worries are unnecessary. The director was confused. What do you mean by that? A smile touched the corner of Duke Alberant's lips. Because the decision isn't in your hands. The decision is in Carson's. Sunlight dappled the forest floor. Lydia was stopped by a colleague. We've been summoned. It's a direct order from the director. Lydia frowned slightly. What's happening all of a sudden? She walked up to Count Walbart. I'm very sorry. It seems I must cut our conversation short. Count Walbart looked at her in confusion. Did something happen? Lydia explained. The director has summoned all the trainers, so. Count Walbart looked thoughtful. Could it be because of Duke Alberant? Lydia sighed helplessly. Count Walbart said, if Trainer Lydia says so, then it can't be helped. Lydia leaned close and whispered in the Count's ear, next time you visit, I'll write down the recipe for Rudel's favorite snack. Count Walbart waved goodbye. Lydia bowed. Thank you very much for your understanding. She turned and asked, where are we supposed to gather? Her colleague shouted, Training Ground 1. The crowd was bustling. All the trainers were gathered there. The director's voice rang out sharply. You're late, Trainer Lydia. Lydia, panting slightly, said, I'm very sorry, Director. The owner of the dragon I'm in charge of, Count Walbart, was visiting. Her gaze went past the crowd and landed on the figure of a man. That man was Duke Alberant. He stood on a high platform, the nervous director beside him. His presence was like a mountain pressing down and making it hard to breathe. Lydia's heart sank. She had a bad feeling. The director cleared his throat. The reason I've gathered you all is to select a trainer for His Grace, the Duke's dragon. A stir went through the crowd. Duke Alberant's dragon? The Grix dragon? That kind of dragon. Isn't it always handled by the ducal family's exclusive trainers? The director shouted, quiet. This is not mandatory. Anyone confident in training the Duke's dragon. Now please step forward. Lydia crossed her arms, her eyes sharp. Are they crazy? The Grix dragon chose the Alberant family. In other words, there's very little information about them. A lack of information means huge risks. Not knowing which of a trainer's actions might provoke, it means having to withstand a dragon's fury with a fragile human body. But why would the Duke entrust a trainer from here instead of using his family's exclusive trainer? But beyond the risk lies a huge opportunity. A hand shot up high. I'll do it. Countless hands went up. Me too. I'm willing to. This was clearly a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Lydia stood outside the crowd, her expression grave. The opportunity is good, but the ducal territory is too far from the capital. If I'm chosen, I'll have to leave this place and go to the ducal territory. A greasy voice sounded in her ear. What's wrong? Scared? Lydia turned her head. Thompson was giving her a malicious smile. You can act all tough, but in the end, you're just a woman. Hesitating in the face of an opportunity like this just proves it. A female colleague with short hair pushed Thompson away. Listen to what this idiot is saying. Lydia looked disgusted. Ignore him. Thompson pointed to the short-haired colleague. Who are you calling an idiot? The short-haired colleague met his gaze without fear. I heard you couldn't even handle a rock armor dragon and took your anger out on an apprentice. Now who's the idiot? Lydia's gaze turned icy. The director is watching. The director's gaze was like an invisible tiger looming over the entire training ground. Thompson turned and left. The short-haired colleague said softly, you got lucky. She looked at Lydia. Is it because of the orphanage? Lydia smiled in response. Yeah, you know my situation. Her eyes twinkled. But if I miss an opportunity like this, the dean would probably scold me harshly. If she were here, she'd probably nag me to follow my heart. The director took out a container of lots. You will face the dragon in the order drawn. Everyone, get ready. Lydia stood alone in the shade of a tree. But I prefer a peaceful life, not this kind of roller coaster existence. Duke Alberant's voice rang out among the crowd. If there is danger, we will intervene. Your safety is guaranteed. Lydia tapped her toe lightly on the grass. This is exactly why I absolutely cannot get involved. That man is like the male lead in a novel. Once you get involved with someone like that, it's the beginning of endless suffering. Anyway, I didn't sign up, so it doesn't matter. Two female colleagues whispered not far away. His Grace the Duke is so handsome. A piercing, wicked laugh cut through the air. Flames instantly engulfed the training ground. The trainers' mouths fell open in terror, their hands reaching forward in vain. The director was violently thrown to the ground by a huge force. Lydia's pupils contracted. What in the? The red dragon snorted scorching breath from its nostrils. It's even fiercer than I imagined. Training it will be exceptionally difficult. The short-haired collie complained. Did you see that? That's no joke. Lydia wiped her cheek. A moment of silence for those who weren't chosen. Thompson's gaze was predatory. A bunch of typical women. Watch carefully. I'll show you how it's done. He struck a confident pose as if victory was already his. Thompson strode towards the red dragon. Lydia's eyes followed him intently. Thompson reached out and gently touched the red dragon's scales. The red dragon lay quietly. Thompson clapped his hands smugly. To be honest, I didn't expect it to be this easy. He sneered. I knew it. Those who can't never will. Lydia shouted in alarm. Watch out, you idiot. The red dragon's sharp claws glinted with a cold light. A look of shock spread across Thompson's face. The red dragon's jaws snapped shut on Thompson. He let out a pained grunt and was slammed to the ground. The red dragon let out a low roar. It opened its flame-filled maw, aiming at Thompson on the ground. Thompson let out a piercing shriek. Spare me. Lydia took a whistle from her pocket and put it to her lips. The red dragon's golden, vertical pupils turned towards Lydia. The director ordered loudly, "Everyone, ready your magic equipment." Lydia ran forward. Her short-haired colleague called out anxiously, "Lydia!" Thompson screamed from within the red dragon's jaws, his face twisted in fear. "Do something." Lydia stopped in front of the giant dragon. "Damn it, it's not like I'm a fool. I could have just watched that idiot die." Her gaze locked onto the red dragon. "Look here, without your permission, I won't come any closer." After a moment of observation, Lydia realized this dragon possessed extremely high intelligence. It didn't hide its irritation and boredom. It only issued gentle warnings, never crossing the line. The red dragon's claw gently lowered. Thompson collapsed to the ground, a mess of tears and snot. "If I don't fire that guy after this, then I'm really quitting." The red dragon's golden, vertical pupils watched Lydia quietly. Lydia held her breath, waiting for its breathing to steady. Then she carefully began to back away, step by step. The red dragon's jaw slammed down. It let out a deafening roar and spread its massive wings. Cold sweat streamed down Lydia's face. "Damn it, was I too hasty?" Gasps erupted from the crowd. The red dragon's enormous head slowly lowered, gently nuzzling the top of Lydia's head as if seeking affection. Lydia was completely stunned. The red dragon stuck out its tongue and gently licked Lydia's cheek. The surrounding crowd fell into a dead silence. Everyone was full of questions. What on earth is happening? Duke Alberant's gaze passed over the crowd, landing on Lydia and the red dragon. A novice trainer. How disappointing. He turned and spoke to the director beside him. What kind of trainer approaches a dragon rashly without first observing its behavior? The director was at a loss for words. Duke Alberant cut him off coldly. "We'll talk next time." He turned and strode away, then stopped in front of Lydia. He asked softly, "What's your name?" Lydia's voice trembled slightly. "Lydia." Duke Alberant's gaze fell upon her. "Trainer Lydia, your performance was excellent." Lydia quickly waved her hands. "Not at all. I was just following standard procedure." He crossed his arms. "But you were the only one who actually followed procedure." A smile touched the corner of his lips. "Would you consider training Carson?" The red dragon nuzzled Lydia affectionately. Cold sweat dripped down Lydia's back. "Absolutely not. I never once thought about being the Duke's private trainer. Not even for a second." Lydia sat on the sofa. She bowed her head in apology. "Forgive my bluntness, but I cannot accept the position of private trainer." The Duke leaned forward. "Why?" He picked up his teacup. "Are the conditions not to your liking?" Lydia explained, "If it were just about the conditions, I would have stepped forward when there was an opportunity to tame your dragon. I never applied to train an Agrix-type dragon. If my colleague hadn't made a mistake, I wouldn't have intervened. The director will probably be very angry, but I can't leave that orphanage. It's my everything. It's not just a place where I grew up. It's much more than that. I want to share even a small part of the dean's burden. I want the younger children's safety to no longer be a burden. This is the path I've chosen for myself. I cannot leave the Yasha Training Center. I'm truly very sorry." The Duke sat alone on the sofa, thinking. Interesting. The rarity of the Agrix dragon and the glory associated with the Duke himself. She rejected it all. Can Carson easily find another trainer he's willing to accept? A knock sounded at the door. The Duke said in a deep voice, "Come in." The director handed over a document. He spoke nervously. "Your Grace." The Duke took the document. "What is it?" The director bowed. "Your Grace, the dragon did indeed show affinity for Trainer Lydia, but her skill level is another matter. As you can see, Trainer Lydia has no experience handling the noble dragons of the Asar Empire. She mainly trains dragons from common families in other countries. To call her a top-tier trainer would be a bit of a stretch. Handing Lydia over to you is out of the question. In fact, she is now an important asset to our center. The nobles, in order to protect their ridiculous pride, constantly pressure the center. If not for Count Harrison's generous funding, our reliance on Lydia would be even deeper. This current situation gives us a reason to fire Thompson. It couldn't be better." The Duke flipped through the document. "Director, no matter how talented a trainer is, if the dragon rejects them, what use is that talent? If you truly doubt that trainer's abilities, are you willing to take responsibility for my dragon yourself?" The director let out a terrified grunt. The Duke looked down at the report in his hand. Whether trainer Lydia will agree to become the exclusive trainer is currently unclear. She has already refused multiple times. The background section states she grew up in an orphanage and maintains a strong emotional bond with it, making her difficult to transfer. The Duke stood up. That's all for today. By the way, Carson will be staying at this training center for the time being. The director's face instantly turned pale. As you command, Your Grace. The Duke walked to the door, turned back, and smiled. Since there's someone here who can handle him, there shouldn't be a problem. Lydia looked bewildered. So you're saying the Duke entrusted an Agrix dragon to our center? Is the Duke insane? Impossible. Lydia's mind was in chaos. Does he know how many dragons I'm responsible for? And now I have to add an Agrix dragon? The director retorted coldly. Then who else do you think can take care of an Agrix dragon? Lydia recalled the scene at the training ground. The director interrupted impatiently. There's no training request. You don't have to train him, just feed and manage him. Lydia slammed her hand on the table and stood up. Director, Thompson caused this mess. Why do I have to clean it up? The director spread his hands, looking helpless. This is the Duke's decision. I have no right. Lydia was furious with Thompson. You useless bastard, causing trouble from start to finish. And now you're just lying in the infirmary. I should have let the Agrix smash his head. Lydia pulled out a letter. Director, thank you for taking care of me all this time. The director lunged forward. I absolutely will not allow you to resign. He clung tightly to Lydia's leg. What about the dragons you're in charge of? Think of the dragons. He looked up, his eyes welling with tears. Lydia, please. Lydia gritted her teeth inwardly. Honestly, he's definitely doing this on purpose. He knows my weakness all too well. But he's right. If I suddenly leave the remaining dragons. Lydia's expression softened. She sighed. All right. The director clasped his hands together, his eyes shining. I knew it, Lydia stated firmly, but I will only be responsible for managing Carson's scales. That's it. I will do absolutely nothing more. The director immediately replied, of course, of course. Thank you so much. You've really saved my life. Lydia collapsed onto the sofa. I'm not doing this for you. Director, just go away. I won't touch anything else. I'll only do the management work I mentioned. I will absolutely not become an exclusive trainer. Absolutely not an exclusive trainer. Night fell. On a door hung a wooden sign. Special care. Person in charge. Lydia. Lydia pushed a cart full of food, stopping in front of a huge dragon stable. This is truly intimidating. She looked at the behemoth in the darkness and spoke softly. Are you okay? You must be uneasy with the sudden change in environment. I'll be in charge of taking care of you until the Duke arrives. The red dragon, Carson, suddenly lunged at Lydia, opening its massive jaws. Lydia hurriedly shouted, wait a minute. Carson looked bewildered. He suddenly roared again, the sound deafening. But Lydia was unusually calm. She held up a finger. Wait. She gently touched the tip of Carson's nose with her fingertip. Carson instantly quieted down, tilting his head in confusion. Lydia's heart was in turmoil. Wow, so cute. I must be crazy. She struggled to maintain a calm exterior. Good. Well done, right? Carson began to enjoy the food. Lydia watched, lost in thought. It seems he hasn't had a proper meal in a long time. Carson ate heartily, his eyes filled with confusion. He seemed to have never received such treatment. Lydia's heart stirred. Just managing him for a bit ignited her desire to train him. She forcibly suppressed the thought. No. Lydia crossed her arms. Are you finished eating? Carson let out a low growl. Lydia put a leash on Carson, and we should go for a walk. Carson struggled violently, letting out a heaven-shaking roar. Lydia refused to let go. Carson grew more frantic, roaring with extreme impatience. Lydia gritted her teeth. She tightened her grip on the leash, her eyes determined. Hold on. I have to hold on. If I get too involved, then I'll be completely trapped. Carson roared again. Lydia calmly looked up at him. I will only feed you, walk you, and manage your scales. That's it. I will absolutely not get any more involved. Carson let out a piercing shriek, struggling violently. Lydia faced off with Carson, her gaze unwavering. I said no. The Duke appeared at the door, his silhouette outlined by the sunlight. He stood with his arms crossed, watching quietly. You're taking good care of him. Lydia whipped her head around. Duke. Carson let out a low whimper, his tail wagging gently. He slowly walked toward the Duke. The Duke spoke with a hint of apology. Sorry. I'm late. Carson meekly lowered his head, nuzzling the Duke like a coddled puppy. Lydia watched quietly, so he can make that kind of face too. The Duke turned his head. Taking care of Carson today. How'd it feel? Lydia cleared her throat. You only requested basic management, so? The Duke gently stroked Carson's chin. And it seems it wasn't so bad. As a dragon trainer, the opportunity to interact with an Agrix is rare. Lydia's tone was firm. But I won't do it. The Duke continued. Still, I never expected the trainer Carson likes would be a woman. Lydia clenched her fists. After all, there aren't many female trainers who can handle medium to large-sized dragons. She felt a chill. What's with that unsettling gaze? The Duke stared at Lydia. It's surprising, but it doesn't matter. As long as Carson doesn't dislike the trainer. Lydia kept her head down. Excuse me, even if you stare at me like that, I have absolutely no intention of becoming his exclusive trainer. The Duke took a step forward, his tone gentle. But don't forget, I can change my mind at any time. Lydia replied stiffly, I understand. The Duke turned to leave. Then, until I return to the duchy, I'll leave Carson in your care. Lydia responded in a low voice, yes. Since I'm responsible, I'll do my best to take care of him. A smile played on the Duke's lips. Is that so? Then I'll just see how long you can keep up that tough act. Lydia shuddered. What? I feel like I've accidentally triggered something. Why is he saying such devilish lines? Her smile became stiff. Cold sweat trickled down. Earlier, I took the time to send letters to other training centers. Please reply quickly. Anyone, please come quickly. To put it bluntly, I'm done for. I wrote to all the other training centers, but he beat me to it. I just wanted to find someone to help me feed the animals. But my teammates all ran away, leaving only an I'm sorry. This has become a complete solo mission. Lydia finished the work at hand. Done. Count Walbart said admiringly, your skills are as miraculous as ever. Lydia said, you flatter me, Count Walbart. Today is your last day, isn't it? Count Walbart stroked his beard. Yes, it's time to return to my homeland. He looked at Lydia, his eyes filled with regret. To be honest, leaving a talent like you here is a waste. You obtained your dragon trainer license at the youngest age and with the highest score, but you still couldn't find a job within the Empire, could you? I suppose that's why I was given a chance. Dragon trainers who can work closely with dragons are, for the most part, nobles and the wealthy. For them, dragons play a decisive role in succession disputes, and dragon trainers can shape dragons into what their masters desire. They naturally flock to places where wealth and power are gathered. Lydia mused, thanks to the director's connections, I'm always pushed aside. But I don't care. In the end, I just have to suck up to them anyway. Count Harris is a prime example. But as long as I can work with dragons, I'm content. There aren't many places like the training center where you can interact with all sorts of dragons. Count Walbart looked at her. Trainer Lydia, you really don't have much ambition. But a little ambition is a good thing. After all, water that is too clear has no fish. He handed Lydia a handkerchief. If you change your mind, you can come find me anytime. Lydia stood quietly. Just watching the dragons is enough to satisfy me. That's why I gritted my teeth and got my license. After joining the Asar Training Center, I got to see all the dragons of my dreams. She unfolded the handkerchief and gasped, what is this? A huge red gem lay quietly inside. What more could I ask for? If I sell it or donate it, I could probably summon a priest. The Duke's voice came from behind. Do you know them? Lydia spun around. Duke Alberant. What are you doing here? Her gaze went past the Duke and saw a familiar old woman. How? As the Dean with the Duke. There's no way they would have any connection. The Dean asked gently, Lydia, are you well? Lydia replied stiffly, yes, I'm Fine. The Duke turned to leave. I have no other requests. I'm going to check on Carson first. You two have a good talk. Lydia looked puzzled. What on earth is going on? The Dean walked forward. Lydia, she took Lydia's hand. I'd like to talk to you. Do you have a moment? Lydia and the Dean sat opposite each other. Steaming tea and snacks were on the table. Lydia spoke first. Is something wrong? Are you well? Or is one of my brothers or sisters sick? The Dean took a sip of tea. Lydia, what do you think of the Alberant Duchy? What do you think of the Agrix? Lydia was stunned. The question was too sudden. She stammered, He's truly magnificent. Even when he's still, he seems to shimmer with a red light. When you touch his scales, you can feel the fine ridges. The shimmering light might be related to the shape of his scales, or even his magic. The Dean watched with interest. Is that so? Lydia's eyes lit up. Yes, like burning fish scales. No wonder he's called the fire volcano. You'd be fascinated if you saw him too. She gestured excitedly. He's one of the most beautiful dragons I've ever worked with, and he's incredibly smart. The Dean smiled. Lydia came back to her senses. Yes? The Dean looked at her seriously. I want you to be the one to train Duke Alberant's dragon. Lydia's smile froze on her face. Wait, what? The Dean's voice echoed in the room. The rumor that a brilliant trainer has soothed the Duke's dragon has already spread. Not long after, His Grace the Duke personally visited the orphanage. He donated a large sum of money and even brought a priest with him. Thanks to that priest, the children at the orphanage received care. The children who needed treatment received it without delay. Lydia's voice trembled slightly. And you? Did they? The Dean smiled. Of course, I received help as well. Lydia clenched her fists. That's great. Her eyes grew moist. Tears streamed down her face. That's really great. The Dean stood up. Lydia. She walked over to Lydia and gently took her hands. Don't worry. Let's seize this opportunity the Duke has given you. I know better than anyone how sincere you are about this job. Your hands are proof of that. She hugged Lydia. I've always felt it was a pity. You could have flown so much higher and further, but you held yourself back because of us. My proud daughter, I just want to see your hard work pay off. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, falling on the Duke and Carson. He was resting comfortably on the grass, using the dragon's wing as a pillow. Lydia approached him. The Duke opened his eyes. Trainer Lydia, did you have a pleasant chat? Lydia bowed her head slightly. Thanks to you, Your Grace. The Duke chuckled. My blessing? Lydia took a deep breath. I've considered your proposal, Your Grace. The Duke sat up. I'm not sure which proposal you're referring to. Lydia looked annoyed. He went all the way to the orphanage himself, and now he's playing dumb. He's deliberately making things difficult. Lydia put on a professional smile. What a shame. After going to such great lengths, you've forgotten your own proposal. Am I to understand that the offer has been withdrawn? The Duke let out a light laugh. Lydia continued, as I said before, there are many trainers with more experience and skill than I have. The Duke stood up. Can't you take a joke? All right. He walked in front of Lydia. Since you've changed your mind, it's a good thing for us as well. Then let's discuss the details. Lydia smiled slightly. That suits me just fine, Your Grace. The children's eyes were filled with tears. Sister, you have to come back and see us. Lydia knelt down, comforting a sobbing child. Don't cry. I promise I will. She made a pinky promise with the child. After signing the contract with the Duke, time flew by. Soon, it was the day to leave for the Albarant Duchy. The Dean hugged Lydia tightly. You must take care of yourself first. I'll always be cheering for you. Lydia closed her eyes, savoring the last moment of warmth. All right to you. A voice called out, are you really leaving? Lydia turned her head. Melissa. Melissa waved from a distance. She smiled and said, it's a shame we have to part, but everything worked out well. Lydia turned to her colleagues. Thank you for coming to see me off despite being so busy. Melissa spoke up. I have some news for you. Think of it as a farewell gift. Lydia whipped her head around. What news? Melissa leaned close to Lydia. Duke Albarant filed a formal complaint. Thompson was fired. A champagne cork popped, celebrating this long overdue justice. I heard he needs 6 weeks to recover. It's so satisfying. The Duke really went all out this time. When you're on vacation, let's have a good drink to celebrate. Do a good job over there. The children and her colleagues waved goodbye at the city gate. Lydia smiled and waved back. Although it wasn't all good times, now that it was really time to leave, she had mixed feelings. It was both a relief and a sorrow. The Duke leaned against a tree, arms crossed. You're late. Lydia was startled. Sorry, saying goodbye to everyone took some time. The Duke said, anyone who didn't know better would think you were never coming back. The contract guarantees ample vacation and benefits. Lydia puffed out her cheeks. I could have gotten there perfectly fine on my own. There was no need for you to trouble yourself to come pick me up personally. But the contract terms were indeed hard to refuse. Excellent salary, plenty of vacation, and various benefits. But there was one additional condition. Lydia sat across from the Duke, carefully reading the contract. The primary task is to help the Duke's Knights Dragons get along with Carson. So, is a socialization issue. The Duke asked in return, you figured it out? Lydia answered confidently, of course. There has never been any tension between Carson and the Duke. Quite the opposite. Their relationship is ideal. With just a little observation, you can see he always makes time for Carson. Lydia pointed to a clause in the contract. What about this one? If the trainer deems additional training necessary, a corresponding bonus will be provided. The Duke explained, it means exactly what it says. No one understands the dragon's needs better than its trainer. So if you find I've missed something, feel free to tell me. I will ensure you are fairly compensated. Lydia's brow furrowed slightly. It sounds like there will definitely be things that require my judgment. If that situation really arises, then can we adjust the additional compensation? The Duke didn't hesitate. Of course. Lydia followed behind the Duke. Since we've agreed to adjust the details later. But then there's no problem. Don't overthink it. The contract is signed anyway. I just need to do a good job. Lydia braced herself. Get it together. Lydia looked around from atop her dragon. They were crossing a peaceful meadow. There's even a stream here. This is amazing. A place like this is a perfect spot to raise dragons. Several people in cloaks appeared. Their cloaks were emblazoned with a dragon crest. They were members of the Duke's Knight Order. A member of the Knight Order spoke up. Lydia, I know you're excited, but please calm down a bit. Lydia responded with a smile. I grew up in the city, so when I see a place so suitable for raising dragons, I can't help but stare. The Knight's tone grew heavy. But this place isn't as wonderful as it looks. Since Carson listens to you, maybe it's not a big deal for you. Lydia's smile froze. What do you mean? The Knight said, you'll understand when you see it for yourself. The atmosphere instantly turned cold. Lydia felt a chill and tightened her grip on the reins. They worked hard to tame an unruly dragon, only for a newcomer to suddenly appear and the dragon becomes docile and obedient. Their reaction is understandable. If I were them, I'd feel betrayed too. Besides, I heard the eastern region was in chaos a few years ago. I know very little about what happened. I can't just assume everything will go smoothly. After all, this is the Albarant Duchy. The Duke's status is second only to the Emperor. The lead knight shouted, open the gate. Lydia was full of anticipation. A place this big must have lots of dragons and trainers. What kind of mysterious dragons will I meet? Her fantasy came to an abrupt end. A knight spoke. I know what you were expecting, but this is the reality. Lydia looked confused. Are there really no other dragons? The knight explained, with Carson around, it's impossible for them to stay here. Well then, I'll be taking my leave. I can't leave my dragon here. He galloped away abruptly. Lydia reached out a hand to stop him. Wait. She looked bewildered. What's going on? Is he really a licensed trainer? If dragons were that easy to deal with, we wouldn't need trainers at all. It is difficult, but you're just going to avoid it like that? Lydia sighed. Forget it. Let's go inside first. She led Carson and turned towards the manor. All right, I admit Carson is indeed ill-tempered, but it doesn't seem intentional. It's more like they just don't know how to get along. Lydia gently stroked Carson's head. I'm not mad at you. She brought Carson to the door. Don't worry, I'll be back soon. Wait inside for a bit. I'll be right back. This is our first training session. Be calm and wait patiently. You can do that, right? Carson let out a low murmur. Lydia walked into the manor. Her footsteps echoed in the empty hall. That's right, it's not the dragon's fault. Usually, when something like this happens, Lydia's eyes were red, burning with anger. She held up her trainer's license. Duke Albrant, this is entirely the owner's responsibility. A blond man bowed. Welcome back, Your Grace. The Duke had his back to him. Anything noteworthy happen while I was away? The blond man was Bhaskar, Albrant's private secretary. He adjusted his glasses. As expected, work has piled up. Many trainers have resigned recently. Just filling the vacancies left during the time you inherited the title is a full-time job. The Duke leaned back in his chair, his body sinking into the soft leather. The biggest problem is, thought the trainers. It was necessary to get rid of the Yuli's Albrant couple. But when I lost my parents as a child, thought the former Duke and Duchess, they couldn't wait to move in, attempting to steal everything from the ducal house. For noble families, dragons are a symbol of power. They are power itself. Therefore, those wealthy families all have exclusive trainers. It's commonplace to treat trainers as vassals. In noble families that raise rare dragon species, the status of a trainer is even higher because only the exclusive trainer holds the secret to taming them. But those key figures are all gone now. My uncle must have thought the trainers would betray him, but he never expected that he would kill them all when the tables turned. Bhaskar asked, by the way, have you found a new trainer? The Duke's lips curved slightly. I found someone very interesting. Bhaskar was stunned. Interesting? He asked curiously, what kind of person? The Duke replied calmly, a trainer that Carson has truly grown close to. Bhaskar was completely confused. What? The Duke repeated. I said, Carson has shown affection for her. He practically melts in front of her. Bhaskar was aghast. That Carson? Even I rarely get to see him. What a picky dragon Carson is. Unless his mysterious standards are met, he won't show himself for years, even decades. I can't imagine it. The Duke said, you'll meet her soon enough. The main doors burst open. Lydia's figure appeared in the doorway. Duke Albrant. Bhaskar shuddered. He looked at the Lydia before him, his face full of shock. Lydia spread her arms, her body seemingly wreathed in flames. So you were here? She took a step forward, her shoe heel tapping heavily on the floor. The Duke said, what is it? Isn't it your responsibility to care for and train Carson? Bhaskar looked down at her. A woman? Lydia slammed her hands on the table. That's exactly why I'm here. First, I have a question. Has Carson always lived alone? The Duke answered, if you mean was he independent by nature, then yes, he's been like that since he was young. Lydia hung her head. Oh my God. The Duke noticed her strange behavior. What's wrong? Lydia raised her head. Your Grace, let's first clarify the training goals. As I understand it, your primary objective is to ensure Carson doesn't attack other dragons and accepts food from others. Is that correct? The Duke nodded in confirmation. Correct. Lydia's tone was passionate. Then the first thing we need to do is change locations. The Duke raised a question. Why? Carson is isolated because he feels uncomfortable around other dragons, and other dragons are just as uneasy around him. Lydia crossed her arms. That's precisely why I insist on moving him. I know it's difficult to manage, but complete isolation is not the solution. His personality has become so volatile because he's been deprived of the opportunity to socialize with other dragons. He simply doesn't know how to interact with his own kind. A thoughtful look passed through the Duke's eyes. He stared at Lydia. Are you sure? Lydia didn't back down. Yes, I'm sure. The Duke's gaze was sharp. If that's the case, then all consequences arising from this training will be the full responsibility of trainer Lydia. Correct? Lydia met his gaze without fear. Since it's part of Carson's training, of course, Your Grace. But before we begin, we need to make some preparations. The Duke tilted his head slightly. What preparations? Lydia announced. Basic obedience training. It will take time to move Carson's enclosure. I plan to use this window to conduct the training. The Duke said, I see. Then 1 week should be enough, right? Lydia was stunned. What? Bhaskar grabbed his hair in terror. The Duke tapped his fingers on the desk. You set yourself. Conducting obedience training while the enclosure is being moved. That's certainly something to look forward to, isn't it? He slowly approached Lydia. I trust that as an exclusive trainer, you won't be foolish enough to mess up your first task. Lydia clenched her fists. This guy really knows how to pick on a weakness. The Duke looked down at her, his face impassive. Presumably, no one has ever dared to speak to him like this. Past trainers were all busy flattering him, never daring to speak a word of truth. Lydia raised the corners of her mouth, hands on her hips. I will definitely produce results that will satisfy you. Blue sky, white clouds, flower shadows swayed. Lydia took a hard bite of an apple with a crisp crunch. She leaned against a tree, looking glum. Are they avoiding me? As soon as they see me from a distance, they freeze up, and then they blatantly avoid me. It's too much. Lydia sighed, looking at the distant manor. Although I've been too busy to strike up a conversation. But still, she tossed the apple core into a bucket behind her. Today is the day to test the results. To test the basic obedience training I promised the Duke. I can't believe I have to demonstrate this in public. She swung herself onto the dragon's back. Let's go, Carson. Carson let out a low roar and flew into the sky with a beat of his wings. Since I made a promise, I have to show my employer the results he wants. Now, there's only one thing left to do. On the ground, a white dragon startled, neighing and rearing up. A knight struggled to hold its reins. The Duke stood in the middle of the lawn. He looked up, his gaze as cold as a blade. You've come. Carson landed steadily, a low growl rumbling in his throat. Carson let out a threatening growl, hot air hissing between his bared teeth. The knights panicked, desperately trying to calm the frightened white dragon. Calm down. Lydia's voice was calm and firm. Carson, back down. Carson instantly reined in his hostility, meekly lowering his head. He let out a purring sound and nuzzled against Lydia's leg. Lydia ordered again, further back. Carson let out a displeased growl, but still obediently moved back. The knights were dumbfounded. Carson is actually obeying her commands. Besides the Duke, there's someone else who can control Carson? Carson lay down obediently, his head pressed against the grass. The Duke watched all of this from a distance. Lydia's lips curved into a slight smile. Just as I promised, Carson has perfectly executed the basic commands. I'm certain he will be completely obedient. But what's that expression on the Duke's face? Shouldn't he be happy, normally? The Duke stood there, expressionless. Lydia turned to face him. For now, yes. The Duke questioned for now. Lydia explained, because nothing in this world is perfect. Carson opened his mouth and let out a light cry. Lydia continued, dragons aren't tools. They're living beings. No one knows when one might suddenly lose control. The Duke spoke slowly, Trainer Lydia. Lydia bowed her head slightly. Yes. Your Grace, the Duke issued a new order. From now on, the apprentice trainers of the ducal house are yours to educate. Lydia's expression froze. Her mind went blank for a moment. What? He was incredulously asking her to educate them? But there are so many other trainers here. Why me? The Duke said flatly. Did I not say? They are apprentice trainers. The official trainers of the Albrant family have all resigned for certain reasons, creating a personnel shortage. Lydia's pupils contracted violently. Wait, you mean apprentices have been managing and training the dragons all this time? And today's training was that important? Why are you only telling me this now? What if something had gone wrong? What were you planning to do? The Duke's tone was indifferent. I was present. I would have handled it. Lydia's body trembled with anger. People and dragons could have died. What if Carson, on a whim, had disobeyed my command? The Duke's gaze turned icy. Is that so? A cold smirk played on his lips. Fortunately, the control training was a success. Otherwise, the price would have been steep, and you would have been held fully responsible. Lydia was furious. This madman. She struck the straw post. How can you not have a single official trainer? The Albrant family, the family chosen by the Agrix dragon, doesn't have a single one? That's as absurd as an ancient noble family saying they've lost their family tree. The Duke's voice came from the doorway. That assessment isn't entirely wrong. Lydia turned. Your Grace, what are you doing here? The Duke's voice replied, I came to praise you. Carson's training was a success, but it seems that's no longer necessary. He walked up to Lydia. Do you remember the terms of the contract? Lydia forced a smile. Yes, of course I do. The Duke said, if the trainer, based on their personal judgment, deems additional training necessary, a bonus incentive will be provided. Lydia was taken aback. The Duke pressed on. In your professional opinion, is having only apprentices participate helpful for Carson's training? Lydia was at a loss for words. The Duke turned to leave. In that case, isn't educating those apprentices a necessary prerequisite for the training? Lydia was speechless. How could he twist the facts like that? She hurried after him. But Your Grace. The Duke stopped. What's there to worry about? The extra work will be handsomely rewarded. Besides, haven't you already made Carson completely obedient to you? Lydia's gaze was profound, just as I expected. She asked tentatively, Your Grace, are you perhaps disappointed that Carson is obeying a trainer? Lydia stared intently at the Duke's back. He's hesitating. He's definitely disappointed. I saw his body stiffen just now. Lydia took a deep breath. Although the contract states, I understand, educating the apprentices is also my duty. Her tone suddenly changed. But putting other things aside, a prominent family like the Albrants must have secrets passed down from generation to generation of official trainers, right? Are there any records left? The Duke suddenly asked, how much do you know about the Albrant family? Lydia was a bit confused. The Albrant family? In what specific regard? The Duke added, as a dragon trainer, I imagine you've heard the gossip among the nobility. Lydia lowered her gaze slightly. My apologies. I primarily train dragons for clients all over the kingdom, so I'm not familiar with the secrets of the aristocracy. The Duke's gaze drifted into the distance. Then I should start from the beginning. Before the Agrix dragon chose me, the ducal family had been without a dragon for 100 years. Strictly speaking, during that period, the people leading the family couldn't be considered orthodox successors. You can imagine what happened next. In a situation without a true, legitimate heir, it was only natural for everyone to covet the ducal title. Of course, my uncle, in particular, was especially greedy. He was a spiteful man by nature. If I can't have it, no one can. Lydia's pupils constricted in shock. The Duke's voice was icy. What do you think a man like that would do to the family's official trainers? Lydia's tone was firm. In that case, this will be a long battle. While I study the Agrix dragon breed through your dragon, Carson, I will also share information with the apprentices here. Their experience is greater than mine, and their help will be invaluable. I will postpone replacing the Agrix dragon's enclosure and instead focus on increasing his time with other dragons, collaborating with the apprentices. The Duke nodded. Very well. If you feel more comfortable that way, then go ahead. I must admit I'm surprised. Since none of this was mentioned in the contract, I thought you would ask to terminate it. Lydia, bathed in the glow of the setting sun, spoke in a calm, sarcastic tone, and then be silenced for causing trouble. She looked the Duke straight in the eye without fear. Rather than let a family scandal leak to a mere dragon trainer, I imagine you would choose the most effective method to silence me forever. The Duke's expression darkened. Lydia asked, am I wrong? Lydia took a deep breath, feeling a strong sense of rejection. Bhaskar stood beside her, facing a group of apprentices. He cleared his throat. As His Grace the Duke said yesterday, this is the exclusive trainer who will be in charge of your training starting today. Lydia managed a standard social smile. Hello everyone, I'm Lydia. I'll be serving as the exclusive trainer from today. I look forward to working with you. The apprentices whispered among themselves, their faces full of reluctance. Just as I thought, Bhaskar's voice rang out. I know you all have many questions and complaints, but I want you to remember one thing. Trainer Lydia was personally chosen by His Grace the Duke. Lydia's smile froze instantly. What? She smiled wryly to herself. In this atmosphere, how am I supposed to speak casually? Those seeing me for the first time are surprised, while those familiar with me are wary and resistant. Yes, from their perspective, this is completely understandable. Lydia placed a hand on her chest. To be frank, it is a fact that I will be guiding your training from today as per the Duke's instructions. However, I also know nothing about this place. The ones who know the Alberant Ducal Dragons best are not me, but you. I will share the knowledge I gained while earning my trainer's license and working at the Asar Training Center. In return, please tell me everything about the Ducal Dragons and the Agrix. That dragon breed. An apprentice raised his hand. Lydia said, please speak. The scarred apprentice's eyes were sharp with a hint of defiance. Trainer, aren't you skilled enough to be personally hired by the Duke? What would happen if an apprentice foolishly approached and angered the Agrix dragon breed? What would happen? Another apprentice chimed in. That's right. Last time, I was almost burned to death just for delivering the wrong food. We can't even take care of ourselves. So what help could we be? A cold smirk formed on Lydia's lips. Look at these people. She looked directly at the crowd. Everyone here seems to know how dangerous dragons are. For that very reason, we should be sharing information precisely, shouldn't we? The scarred apprentice spoke up. Because no one wants to die at the hands of the dragon they're caring for. A female apprentice added, and we're all still unlicensed apprentice trainers. Lydia said, licensed or not, everyone here has a deep affection for dragons, don't you? I'm not here to order you around. I just hope to become a colleague who can care for the Duchy's dragons alongside you. As someone who also loves dragons. A stir went through the crowd. Lydia bowed deeply. I sincerely asked for your help. One day ago, the Duke suddenly burst out laughing. His eyes glinted with approval. Clever. I like it. Otherwise, you would have met the same fate as the trainers before you. Lydia's face darkened. Madman, he's actually threatening me. The Duke turned and walked away, his back straight and cold. Of course, I'll ensure reasonable compensation is paid. That way, there will be fewer complaints, won't there? He glanced back, the setting sun outlining the curve of his lips. But before that, just like those apprentice trainers, prove your worth. If you want to live. A dark aura of fury emanated from Lydia. She slammed a fist against the door. Damn him, threatening people with their lives and money. One of the apprentice trainers smiled. You're the exclusive trainer. You should know that the best way to understand dragons is to manage them directly, right? Lydia looked at the huge dragon stable before her. So, you're saying I have to feed the dragons here? Alone? Inside the stable, dragons hissed and roared. Roars rose and fell. The man's smile didn't fade. Because it's the most basic task. Lydia thought, that damn bastard. He's looking down on me. But if I say I can't do it, he'll use it as an excuse to criticize me. Damn it. I'd rather die than see that happen. Lydia instantly put on a brilliant smile, clasping her hands. Is just feeding them enough? The man nodded. Lydia's tone was firm. All right, I understand. It's simple. You can go do other work now. As you said, I need to understand the dragons while performing basic tasks. So from now on, I will be fully in charge of feeding. The man was stunned. Really? Lydia beamed. What are you still standing there for? Why don't you leave? Having you help would just get in the way. It's better if you leave quickly. The man said nothing and walked away. Lydia looked at the mountain of food in front of her. So that's how it is. Not funny at all. Did you think you were the only ones to come up with this method to suppress me? I'm a veteran who was tempered by those scoundrels at the Asar Training Center. Piling a mountain of work on me? You think I haven't been through this before? You've picked the wrong person. She turned to face the dragon stable. I'll make you regret handing the feeding work over to me. A small white dragon poked its head out, its tongue lolling. Lydia's expression softened instantly. You're hungry, aren't you? I'll get it ready for you right away. The little dragon let out a low growl. Lydia's gaze fell on the dragon's scales, her brow furrowing. Why did scales look like this? This means you're malnourished. The food must have been very scarce. She crouched down, watching the little dragon wolf down the fruit, her eyes filled with pity. Lydia gently stroked the little dragon's head. I see. No wonder you're eating so ravenously. Just to try and intimidate me, they treat the dragons this way? Fury ignited in her eyes. A joke. I'll hammer the basic principles of a trainer into their heads. A person holding documents looked uneasy. Is this really okay? The seniors also said we at least can't forget to feed the dragons, making her handle 30 portions alone. The scarred apprentice roared. How many years have we been taking care of dragons? On what grounds does a trainer from the capital get to instruct us? Is this reasonable? A contemptuous sneer played on his lips. Loves dragons? That's hilarious. Just you wait. Soon she'll be crying about how hard it is and run away. A week later, the sky was clear. The dragon stable was in chaos. A green-winged dragon was roaring wildly at a long-haired apprentice. The long-haired apprentice backed away in panic. What's wrong with you? It's me. Why are you suddenly like this? Another apprentice rushed over. Mr. Bruce, what do we do now? Bruce was sweating profusely. I'm not sure either. They were calm just a few days ago. What on earth happened? Lydia stood in the sunlight, shouldering a farm tool. What's going on here? Her eyes were cold, her tone flat. Isn't it about time for training? An apprentice stammered in response. It's just. Bruce let out a soft grunt, and the apprentice immediately said, it's nothing. Lydia watched him coldly without a word. She turned. Excuse me, I still have to prepare the next feed. Bruce suddenly realized something. The beasts that were raging just seconds ago. But as soon as she walked in, thought they all quieted down. Bruce hurried after her. Trainer Lydia, please wait. Lydia walked on without turning back. Sorry, I'm Buse. She turned her head, a brilliant smile on her face. I have to feed and train 30 dragons. I really don't have the time. Aren't you all apprentice trainers of the Albrandt family? Your experience is far richer than mine, someone who just came from the capital. Why are you bothering me? Bruce bowed deeply. I'm sorry. Lydia's face was expressionless. I don't know what you're apologizing for, but thanks to you, I've learned a lot while taking care of the other dragons. Bruce looked up. Trainer Lydia's tone was icy. So now you know how to respect me? Why didn't you say anything when you were pushing all the work onto me? The apprentices spoke eagerly. We'll help you. Please, trainer, help us. Lydia turned, shouldering her tool, her gaze as sharp as a knife. You made a complete mess of things, and now you want me to clean it up? Have some conscience. Clean up your own mess. Even if you get burned to death or trampled, it has nothing to do with me. Lydia pushed a cart full of food. They brought all this on themselves. Now that they're cornered, they come crawling back to me. They wanted to dump the dirty, tiring work of feeding the dragons on me to trip me up. They should have expected this would happen. Perhaps those apprentices were just imitating their seniors, try to push the work onto me. But there's one thing they don't know. The amount of food assigned to the apprentices is actually only half of a dragon's normal intake. Lydia flipped through her notes. The other half is usually given during training or when the apprentices are busy with other tasks. This is to get the dragons used to obeying the apprentice trainer's commands. Lydia closed her notes. If they don't even know this and are too scared to enter the dens, they have only themselves to blame. Sunlight fell on the piles of fodder. She was so tired, she was about to collapse. She walked into a huge enclosure. The sleeping Carson let out a contented purr. He opened his golden, slitted pupils, letting out a questioning murmur. Lydia lay down beside Carson. Carson, I'm going to slack off a bit. Don't disturb me during my precious break time. I have about an hour. Until then, just stay still. She lay on Carson. What is this feeling? It's like warm floor heating plus a cat-like purr. This is heaven. How could something feel so warm and comfortable? The whole day's fatigue has vanished. Carson, you're the best. The Duke stood at the entrance of the enclosure, softly calling Carson. He looked at Carson lying motionless on the ground. Are you all right? Carson let out an urgent, low growl, as if responding to his concern. Lydia was fast asleep at Carson's side, bathed in a patch of quiet, peaceful sunlight. The Duke was taken aback. Trainer Lydia, what are you doing here? He crouched down, looking at the sleeping Lydia. Bhaskar was reporting the apprentice trainers don't seem to be following her orders. After a few days of observation, I found that she has been managing 30 dragons all by herself. The Duke sat behind his desk. What? Then why has no one reported this to me? Bhaskar tilted his head slightly, looking thoughtful. My guess is that she probably wanted to handle it herself, seeing it as an internal matter for the trainers. Lydia let out a contented hum, sleeping soundly. The Duke rested his chin on his hand. With this workload, she has every right to use her authority to discipline them. Carson let out a low rumble. The Duke looked at him. Should I not wake her? His hand gently brushed Lydia's cheek. All right, if you want to solve it yourself, then I'll observe a little longer. He stood up, but only for now. It would be a problem for me if Carson's trainer collapsed from overwork. An urgent shout came from the distance. Trainer Lydia, where are you? Lydia woke with a start. I actually fell asleep. She patted Carson's head. Something came up. A sharp shout pierced the air. Trainer Lydia. Lydia whipped her head around. What the hell? Why is he shouting so loudly? What happened? She stood up and hissed in a low voice, keep it down. Did you forget this is a dragon stable? An apprentice with teary eyes looked at her. Something terrible has happened. Lydia looked at his panicked state. This ominous feeling. I swear I've experienced this recently. She held out a hand, signaling him to calm down. Take a deep breath. The apprentice gasped for air. Yes, all the dragons ran away. The moment we opened the gates, they rushed out. We didn't have time to react. Lydia's eyes were cold. So you wanted to tie up the dragons, and they took the chance to escape? The apprentice stammered. Why, yes. A dangerous smile spread across Lydia's face. And now you wanted to clean up your mess? The apprentice trembled. The lead dragon has already taken the others and run far away. We can't control them at all. The remaining dragons won't listen either. Lydia put a hand to her forehead and sighed deeply. Honestly, I really want to let you solve this yourselves. She suppressed her anger. But that's just a thought. After all, dragons are dragons. Even if they're just dragon beasts, if we don't get them under control soon, something worse could happen. Lydia turned, her gaze firm. Carson. Carson let out a low roar, answering her call. Lydia ran out of the stable. The gate to the dragon paddock was wide open. She clenched her fists. I'll find them and bring them back. Carson leaped into the air, soaring into the clouds. Dragon horses, a type of dragon with scales and fur, antlers on their head, a smooth tail, and a form resembling a fine steed. Lydia rode on Carson's back. Where would the dragon horses go? She looked down at the land below. Carson, fly higher. Carson beat his wings powerfully, climbing higher. Lydia gripped the reins tightly, her gaze like a hawk, searching for the escaped herd. Found them. Dragon horses have the habits of horses. They're most likely to run to an open place like this. That blue one is the leader. Look how excited they are. Lydia blew her dragon whistle. A sharp sound pierced the sky. The dragon horse leader jerked its head up, letting out a pained neigh. Carson's giant claws that landed heavily, making the ground tremble. Lydia pulled on the reins, looking down at the entire herd. Had enough fun? Her eyes turned cold. Sorry. Time to go back. The dragon horse leader let out a reluctant growl, its eyes full of wariness. Lydia looked at the herd. They showed no intention of returning. A smile played on her lips. Of course, it would be tricky if I came alone, but I didn't come alone. Carson growled behind her, baring his sharp teeth. Lydia's smile widened. All right, time to go back, okay? The stable doors were open. The apprentices were gathered inside, dejected. An apprentice held his forehead. What should I do? Bruce suggested, let's rest a bit and then go look for the dragon horses. The long-haired apprentice immediately retorted, don't be ridiculous. They run the moment we get close. It's impossible. Even if we find them, do you think they'll come back with us? Bruce put his hands on his hips. Then what? Should we just sit here and wait to be punished? If the Duke holds us responsible for losing the dragon horses, has any of you thought about how to make amends? If you understand, then hurry up and find them. An apprentice ran over. Mr. Bruce. His mouth fell open in terror. The dragon horses. The dragon horses are back. Carson was herding the dragon horses. Lydia, riding on the back of the dragon horse leader, commanded loudly, open the training ground gates. The heavy wooden gates slowly opened. The dragon horses filed in. The apprentices were dumbfounded. How? It's Lydia. Trainer Lydia rode the dragon horse through the crowd, her face expressionless. She dismounted, panting. Lydia's eyes were cold. Are you all insane? She glared at the crowd. A trainer's duty is to manage dragons. That's the most basic responsibility. What kind of trainer lets an entire herd of dragon beasts escape? The apprentices lowered their heads in silence. Lydia scanned them. Nothing to say. Bruce stepped forward. He knelt on the ground and bowed his head low. I'm truly ashamed. Not ashamed. Lydia looked down at them all. Do you admit that your methods are wrong? The apprentices answered in unison. Yes, we admit it. Lydia's gaze fell on the kneeling Bruce. Then, are you willing to stop the pointless power struggles and cooperate with each other? Bruce looked up, his eyes filled with hope. You're not going to fire us? Lydia sighed softly. Well, why do I have to do that? I said it from the beginning. I need all of you. I have no intention of negating the efforts the trainers have put in for the ducal house. What we need is mutual respect. That's all. Bruce excitedly grabbed Lydia's hands. Thank you so much, Trainer Lydia. We will earnestly follow your guidance. Lydia looked at them. Honestly, it would have been better if it had been like this from the start. A pair of shiny leather shoes stepped onto grass. The Duke, arms crossed, watched everything with a displeased expression. So, he glanced at Lydia. What exactly is this situation? Lydia said, reporting to the Duke. There was a small disturbance, but it has been handled. The Duke's eyes were sharp. A small disturbance? Lydia explained, I resolved the incident of the Night Order's dragon horses escaping en masse. The Duke's gaze was as cold as ice. You call this a small disturbance? The Duke's question echoed across the training ground. The ducal knight orders dragon horses went completely out of control, and you called it a small disturbance? Lydia closed her eyes, her brow furrowed slightly. It certainly doesn't look good on my record, but all the dragon horses returned safely, and the ducal house's dragon horse leader is so capable it even brought back a few wild ones. Can't you just turn a blind eye this one time? The Duke's voice was hard. Am I to ignore a grave mistake made by the trainers? Lydia insisted, but didn't the outcome turn out well? Besides, it would be troublesome if the trainers left now. Feeding the dragon beasts is one thing, but training them would be completely impossible. Although they're still apprentices, it's not easy to replace all of them at once. They're the ones who know the ducal house's dragon beast best. The Duke was silent, just watching her quietly. He finally relented. Since trainer Lydia cleaned up the mess, I won't punish them strictly according to the rules. However, he looked down at the apprentices. All apprentices will have 1 year's salary deducted. If, after 1 year, they cannot prove their competence, they will be dismissed without exception. Make sure they all understand. The apprentices bowed deeply, their voices trembling. Thank you, Your Grace. Bruce thought the ducal house's financial resources are immense. No matter how precious trainers are, replacing a few apprentices would be easy. If it weren't for trainer Lydia, things wouldn't have ended so easily. Night fell. The ducal manor was quiet. The Duke crossed his arms. Honestly, he looked at Lydia, who was sleeping soundly on Carson's back. Why is she sleeping here? Carson let out a contented growl. Because she likes me so much. The Duke's tone was skeptical. I don't think that's the reason. Carson let out a threatening growl. The Duke picked up Lydia. He said to Carson, this might be comfortable for you, but it's not for your trainer. You don't want a trainer to get sick and be unable to come see you, do you? Carson fell into thought, letting out a long whine. The Duke turned and left, holding Lydia. Carson growled reluctantly, watching them go. The Duke walked through the long corridor, carrying Lydia. A person's true nature is revealed only when they are pushed to their limits. There hasn't been a single trainer whose skills and character I could trust at the same time. But understanding Lydia is crucial. Being talented and being trustworthy are two different things. The Duke ordered the butler beside him prepare a proper resting place for trainer Lydia and call for a priest. The butler bowed and accepted the order. As you wish, Your Grace. The Duke instructed, she is the ducal house's only exclusive trainer. You must all take good care of her. The butler replied in a low voice, I will remember. The Duke held Lydia, his gaze profound. She not only brought back the escaped dragon beast, but also brought back a few wild ones along the way. Afterwards, she handled Carson with outstanding skill. She proved she's more than just a paper certificate. She is a responsible and valuable talent, completely dispelling any doubts about her abilities. How could such a talent have remained unknown for so long? Lydia let out a soft hum in her sleep. The Duke's eyes widened. This whole affair must have left a deep impression on her. Lydia snuggled against him, sleeping more soundly. Perhaps this is why I can't help but watch her. The morning sun filled the room through the window. Lydia woke with a start. She shot up in bed, gasping. She looked around the magnificent room. Who am I? Where am I? She hugged the blanket and giggled foolishly. I've always wanted to wake up in a strange place and say that line just once. But seriously, where's this place? My last memory was leaning against Carson's scales. This room is way too luxurious. A knock sounded at the door. The butler entered with a kind smile on his face. You're awake, Lydia, dragon trainer. Lydia looked at him, a little surprised. Butler. The butler walked in, pushing a food trolley. Please rest well. It is an order from His Grace, the Duke. Lydia froze. Wait, the Duke said so. Only then did she notice the gorgeous nightgown she was wearing. What the hell is this? The butler explained. The maids changed you into comfortable clothes so you could rest well. The cleric has also been here. He said you showed signs of extreme fatigue. You slept for almost a whole day. Lydia's face froze instantly. A whole day? She asked the butler urgently, where are my clothes? Carson hasn't eaten all day. He must be frantic. The Duke's voice came through. You don't have to worry. He walked into the room. I've already taken care of Carson. If you haven't eaten, we can dine together. Lydia was bewildered. What's going on? Why is he suddenly so nice to me? The dining table was filled with exquisite food. Lydia and the Duke sat opposite each other. Damn it, I thought it would be awkward, so I didn't want to come. But this food is just too delicious. The Duke watched Lydia as she devoured her food. His tone shifted. But isn't it dangerous to sleep in Carson's enclosure? Lydia explained, a little embarrassed. I know, but Carson's scales are just so warm. I couldn't resist. I guess I got caught. The Duke rested his elbow on the table, his fingertips lightly touching his lips. I'm not blaming you, but I hope you'll restrain yourself in the future. Lydia smiled slyly. It seems you've done the same before, Your Grace. The Duke fell silent, his gaze drifting aside. His expression turned serious. Your performance yesterday left a deep impression on me. Why don't we take this opportunity to have a frank discussion? To be honest, Carson's socialization training was an excuse. My real purpose was to find a resident dragon trainer for the duchy. It's very troublesome without a dragon trainer. From a professional standpoint, do Agrix dragons really need a pack structure? Lydia fell silent, her gaze turning sharp. The Duke saw her hesitation. I understand your concerns. All right, then you only need to be responsible for Carson's feeding and basic training. Lydia said, besides that, socialization training is still necessary. The Duke asked, perplexed why. Lydia's tone was calm and cold. Because Carson lives in the human world, not the wilderness. No matter how rare the species is, even if he only chooses the ducal bloodline, if someone gets hurt, there's only one solution left. The Duke's pupils contracted sharply. What is that? Lydia's expression darkened. She clasped her hands on the table. Euthanasia. You don't want it to come to that, do you? The Duke slammed his hand on the table. The wine glass toppled over. I will never allow that to happen. Lydia looked up, her gaze burning. Even if you refuse the royal family? What if a dragon known as the fire volcano causes a disturbance while you're away, and he hasn't received any socialization training? The Duke's expression froze. He was lost in thought. Lydia continued to press him. At that point, do you think they will let it go easily? I may have spoken too harshly, but I cannot guarantee that such a thing will never happen. This isn't just about Carson. After all, human society is built for humans, not for dragons. The reason no accidents have happened so far is only because you genuinely care for Carson. I know this isn't an easy decision to make right away, but I hope you will at least consider it. The Duke's gaze lowered. Lydia continued, since I've signed a contract to become Carson's exclusive dragon trainer, I will certainly do my utmost for both Carson and you. She asked enthusiastically, so, how long should I rest? The Duke stood up. I'll give you a week's vacation. Stay here and rest well during this time. Lydia stood up in shock. A week? What about Carson? The Duke's voice was calm. Lydia, before the dragon trainer came, I was responsible for all those things. Don't worry. As the Duchy's sole exclusive dragon trainer, please take care of yourself. Lydia sank weakly back into her chair and let out a long sigh. Did I speak too harshly? He clearly cares so much about Carson, but for some reason, every time we talk, it feels like we're arguing. I can't be sure yet, but a maid approached with a dish. Miss Lydia, would you like to order more food? Lydia pushed her worries to the back of her mind. I'll stop thinking about it for now. Time to enjoy this sweet vacation. Her eyes sparkled. Yes, please bring me another one. The same steak as before. The third day of Lydia's vacation. Your Grace, are you all right? You look a little pale. The Duke insisted, of course I'm fine. Lydia hesitated. Is a week too long? Maybe I should. The Duke cut her off. No, if you're resting, then rest properly. He turned and left, his back resolute. I don't want to entrust the work to someone who isn't well rested. Lydia watched his retreating back. He really doesn't look well. Did something happen? Oh well, if it were something serious, he would have said so. It's only for a week anyway. I'll have to work hard again after the vacation ends. It's fine. The fifth day of Lydia's vacation. The sun was perfect. She was wearing sunglasses, lying on a chair, and enjoying the rare leisure. A long-haired apprentice ran over in a panic. Lydia, dragon trainer, please help us. Lydia handed him a drink. Drink this slowly, then speak slowly. A familiar scene played out again. The long-haired apprentice pleaded anxiously. Please, come take a look at the Agrix dragon. Lydia said, isn't the problem with your own dragon? If it were Carson, the Duke would be taking care of him personally. Why come to me? The long-haired apprentice explained. The dragons we're looking after are all fine. We're feeding them exactly according to the recipes you wrote. The problem is that Agrix dragon. He cries every night, making the other dragons anxious and restless. A few of the more sensitive dragons have even injured themselves out of anxiety. Lydia shot up. Injured themselves? Are the injuries serious? The long-haired apprentice quickly waved his hands. Not serious. Just some minor wounds. We treated them quickly. But after that, the Duke said he would handle it. He insisted on doing it himself. As a result, that dragon has been crying for days. I came while the others are distracting the Duke. He's snukolviv. Lydia's eyes sharpened. So, he told me everything was fine, but the situation is actually terrible. Lydia's voice was ice cold. Where's the dragon you brought? She swiftly mounted the dragon's back. A mournful cry echoed from the woods. Lydia pulled the reins tight. I can hear it even from this far away. The dragon stables are far from the main residence. Because dragons are huge, even when moving carefully, they make a considerable amount of noise. Normally, you can't hear their calls from this distance. The long-haired apprentice was taken aback. Strange. Why'd it get quiet? This has never happened before. Lydia leaped off the dragon's back and rushed towards the stable doors. She threw the doors open. The Duke was sitting exhaustedly on the ground, one hand on his forehead. He looked up. Lydia, dragon trainer. A deafening dragon's roar echoed. Carson intimately nuzzled Lydia's cheek, letting out a contented whimper. Lydia sighed helplessly. The Duke stood up, a hint of displeasure in his voice. Didn't I tell you to rest well? Lydia stroked Carson's head, her voice firm. When one's own dragon is behaving abnormally, what dragon trainer can rest in peace? She sighed softly. How can he be so stubborn? They say dragons take after their masters. That's not wrong at all. Look at him. being stubborn to the very end. Carson nudged Lydia playfully. Lydia soothed him. Are you unhappy because I took a few days off? Carson let out a low whimper and buried his head in Lydia's embrace. A glint of slyness flashed in Lydia's eyes. She looked at the Duke with a deadpan expression. She recalled the situation from that day. The Duke clearly cared a lot about Carson, but that conversation was strange in every way. Lydia began tentatively, Your Grace. This isn't just about a master being jealous of a dragon. Getting close to the dragon trainer. Carson bit Lydia's clothes. He let out a low growl. Lydia was startled. The decision isn't in the master's hands. Carson will make it himself. From the very beginning, the Duke never intended to accept anyone other than himself and Carson. A dragon you've raised with 10 years of affection suddenly becomes closer to a complete stranger. It's only human to feel disappointed. Carson let out a sharp cry on the grass. Lydia sat nearby, lost in thought. Expressing disappointment is actually a more gentle and mature reaction. But the Duke's case is one of distrust. I've heard that those chosen by dragons usually have deeper emotions than ordinary people. Between a normal person and a dragon, there's a deep bond that others cannot understand. It must be because he has an extraordinary bond with Carson. He chose me, but Lydia bowed deeply. I didn't expect Carson to be like this. I will correct this during training. Besides that, the Duke doesn't trust me. Lydia spoke up. You asked me to rest for a week, but can we start the training immediately today? The Duke turned to leave. I didn't want to disturb your vacation, but I couldn't calm Carson myself. So I had no choice. Lydia sat on the grass. She let out a long sigh. I'm very sorry, but please bear with it. In any case, if I mess this up, I'll be the one to suffer. Normally, an exclusive dragon trainer should have corrected these things when the dragon was young. But I guess no one ever taught the two of them these things. Carson rolled over playfully, letting out a cheerful cry. Lydia looked at the mud all over him. I'll have to give you a bath later. I hope there's a lake nearby where he can soak himself. That would make washing him easy. Lydia sat quietly on the grass, lost in thought. Carson nuzzled her back. Lydia's gaze hardened. Carson, back away. Carson flopped to the ground, letting out an aggrieved whimper. Lydia picked up her whistle, her eyes resolute. That's enough. If you want to be coddled, go to the Duke. Carson hung his head, letting out a low rumble. Lydia turned her head away. To be honest, I want to hug him and treat him well too. What dragon trainer wouldn't want to for a dragon that's close to them? Putting on a cold facade. Besides, Carson is unbelievably cute. But Lydia closed her eyes. Carson was nuzzling her from behind. I have to endure it. Both of them need this experience. I'm the exclusive dragon trainer for both of them now. The Duke stood under a tree. A loud noise made him look over sharply. Carson was roaring and charging toward him. He was knocked to the ground by Carson, a look of disbelief on his face. Carson? Carson licked the Duke's face affectionately. The Duke looked bewildered. Lydia stood to the side, smiling as she spoke. Didn't you ask me to correct Carson's behavior? The Duke looked at Carson, snuggled up beside him. Yes, he mused, but can it be corrected in just one day? Didn't Carson cry for Lydia for 5 straight days, not even listening to me? Did she use some kind of trick? The Duke's face was reflected in Carson's pupils. The Duke gently rested his head against Carson. This isn't a lie. Carson is genuinely happy to see me. Lydia watched them from a distance. Duke, I'm going to instruct the apprentice trainers now. My absence is also part of the training. Then, the Duke sighed softly. Lydia, dragon trainer. Lydia turned back. Her eyes were calm. The Duke spoke in a low voice. I'm sorry. He doesn't usually cry and make a fuss because he wants to see someone. Lydia gave a professional smile. It's all right. I am your exclusive dragon trainer. This is part of my job. Well then, I'll be going. She turned and left, the corner of her mouth curling into a sly smile. Judging by his reaction, the effect seems to be quite good. Excellent. If he doesn't trust me, I'll just keep building that trust. I can breathe a sigh of relief for now. The Duke hugged Carson tightly. Our exclusive dragon trainer. The apprentice trainers gathered around enthusiastically. Lydia, dragon trainer. Lydia responded with a smile. Hello, everyone. I hope I didn't come while you were busy. An apprentice trainer quickly waved his hands. Not all, not at all. We just sent the dragons to the training grounds for exercise. Lydia was thoughtful. Is that so? Did I really scare them that badly before? She cleared her throat. Although it's a day early, I plan to start intermittent training from today. Before that, may I check the dragon's condition first? A dragon poked its head out from behind the railings and let out a low growl. An apprentice trainer stepped aside to lead the way. This way, please. Lydia crouched down. After the dragon flocks walk, do the other dragons go for a walk? The apprentice nodded in confirmation. Yes, one of them is Lord Boskar's dragon. He takes it out separately. Lydia repeated quizzically, Lord Boskar? She had a flash of realization. Oh, it's him. A blonde man with a monocle appeared in her mind. It's a Tyrannosaurus stoke, a truly rare species. The apprentices whispered among themselves. I heard that Duke Alberant brought it here specially. Lydia was puzzled. The Duke seems to be very fond of Lord Bhaskar, to even give him a Tyrannosaurus stoke. The apprentice explained they're childhood friends. They're inseparable. A commotion was heard from a distance. Lydia and the apprentice trainers looked towards the sound. Which one is it? In the darkness behind the fence, a pair of blue eyes gleamed. Lydia asked softly, "Is something troubling you?" She gently held out her hand. "Good boy, will you come over here?" A huge white dragon suddenly roared, baring its fangs. Two apprentice trainers rushed over. "Lydia, dragon trainer, are you all right?" Lydia, squatting on the ground, waved her hand casually. "Yes, I'm fine. May I ask, where's the trainer in charge of the mastlid species?" A man rushed over. "That would be me, dragon trainer Lydia." Lydia stood up. "When you were taking care of him, were there any unusual signs? Please tell me, even if it's something small." The man thought. Unusual signs. Compared to other dragons, Luila is naturally sensitive and reacts more intensely. He's always been like that. Lydia repeated, "Always been like that." Bruce stepped forward. "That dragon has had its owner changed once before. It was during the height of the succession dispute in the Albarant ducal house. I don't know the details. Maybe that's why I survived. I only know that the previous owner and the dragon trainer both died at that time. That explains why he's so sensitive. Dragons are intelligent creatures. When a stranger suddenly appears, claiming to be his new master, deep down, he can feel that his former master is never coming back." Bruce looked at Lydia. "I know this is a shameless request, but is there a way?" Lydia changed the subject. "What kind of person is Luila's current owner?" The man answered immediately. "It's Lady Durna. She is the only alchemist in the Albarant family." Lydia crossed her arms. "An alchemist?" The Duke looked up. "Are you talking about Durna the alchemist? Is something the matter?" Lydia stood before the desk. "May I speak frankly?" The Duke's quill paused on the paper. "Speak." Lydia's eyes were firm. "To be honest, every dragon in the ducal house has a problem. Luila is just the most urgent case." The Duke rested his chin on one hand. "Luila of the mastlid species. Is it possible he could cause an accident?" Lydia nodded. "It's very possible. There are only apprentice trainers there, so I believe it's possible. Managing for 10 years with only apprentices is remarkable in itself. As long as they pass the qualification exam, I believe they can all become qualified dragon trainers." The Duke said, "That's some unexpected praise. I heard you had some friction with them not long ago." Lydia said, "If I were asked to raise dragons under such harsh conditions, I would have shaken my head and walked away long ago." The Duke's gaze fell on the document. "Even so, anyone who doesn't meet the standard after 1 year will be dismissed. After all, the mass escape of the heroes was a major incident." Lydia took a step forward. "But what if I can guarantee that all the trainers will get their qualifications within that year?" The two of them faced each other in the magnificent office. The air seemed to freeze. The Duke's fingers tapped lightly on the desk. "If this is the dragon trainer's stance, I will not stop you." Lydia was slightly taken aback. "What?" The Duke's voice was calm. "Lydia, you should know better than anyone. I trust you will handle Carson's matter as well, correct?" He handed Lydia a scroll. Lydia took the scroll. "Yes." She turned to leave, her footsteps echoing in the empty hall. "I heard Durna locks herself in her lab to focus on research. It won't be easy to get her to come out. If she disregards the authority of the exclusive dragon trainer, show her this." Managing both Carson and Luila at the same time. I thought it would take some time to persuade him, which is why I used the trainer's qualifications as a bargaining chip. I didn't expect him to agree so easily. Lydia stopped in her tracks. "Well, I guess that's lucky. For now, I'll focus on the task at hand." She knocked on a laboratory door. "Is anyone there?" A figure appeared silently from behind the door, their steps light. The door creaked open. Lydia met a pair of unfamiliar eyes. A black-haired woman was leaning against the doorframe, her eyes wary. "Who are you?" Lydia asked tentatively. "Are you Durna, the alchemist?" Durna confirmed her identity. "It's me." Lydia flashed a brilliant smile. "I'm Lydia, the exclusive dragon trainer of the Albarant ducal house." She handed the scroll to Durna. "Why does this feel like a job interview?" Durna stepped aside. "Please come in." Lydia rejoiced inwardly. I passed. She stepped inside. "Thank you." Lydia's words trailed off. She was stunned by the sight before her. The entire room was piled high with books and clutter, a complete mess. Durna's voice broke the silence. "What did you come here for?" Lydia sat on a bench. She smiled and began, "I heard that you were the master of the mastlid dragon, Luila." Durna's body trembled violently. Her face was as pale as paper. Lydia's smile froze. Durna's voice was as faint as a mosquito's buzz. "Luila, did something happen to him?" Lydia quickly explained. "He hasn't caused any trouble, nor is he sick. But it's highly likely that something could happen. That's why I came to suggest behavioral correction." Durna, with her back to her, spoke with a slight tremor in her voice. "Dragon trainer, can't you correct him?" Lydia's tone was firm. "Without the owner's permission, a dragon trainer cannot act on their own. Besides, training is always more effective with the owner present." Durna's hands clenched tighter. "Ever since I became his master, Luila has always been that way. Why is it a problem now?" Lydia looked directly at her. "Lady Durna," she asked calmly, "how many times a week do you go to see Luila?" Durna's body stiffened. Lydia pressed on. "And when you do see him, how long do you stay?" Durna bit her lip. She said nothing. Lydia's gaze sharpened. "Lady Durna." She leaned forward, her voice cold. Do you truly care about Luila? Lydia closed her eyes and sighed softly. If taking care of Luila is a burden to you, you could consider giving him to someone else. If what you need is water from a masslid dragon. Durna spun around abruptly. It's not like that, she shouted emotionally. I can't give Luila to anyone. There are always people like this, who claim to be the dragon's rightful owner, yet stubbornly refuse to let go. Even when their behavior borders on abuse, they will loudly insist, he's mine. Lydia said, if you are willing to make an effort to improve, there is no need to change owners. But if that's not the case, as a dragon trainer, I believe that appointing a new owner is the best option. Durna's body trembled. I really did try. I tried to get close to Luila, but he wouldn't open up to me easily. Whenever I got close, he would growl. And then the accident happened. That day, Luila was unusually sensitive for some reason. Even now, I don't know what I did wrong. I just felt a searing pain. Then blood splattered everywhere. Durna lifted her robe, revealing a hideous scar on her abdomen. They said if the wound had been any deeper, my organs would have spilled out. Lydia watched quietly. I understand the situation, but this makes things even harder to comprehend. Facing Luila is a heavy burden for you. Then may I ask why you refuse my proposal? Some dragon trainers, after being injured by a dragon, give up due to the trauma. Lady Durna, your injury was severe. Durna's voice was choked with tears. Even so, I can't send Luila away. A flicker of confusion crossed Lydia's eyes. Luila is. Durna covered her face with her hands, tears seeping through her fingers. Luila was my father's dragon. I wanted to build some kind of connection with him. But now, every time I see him, I remember that day. The moment I see him, I remember being injured. I don't know what to do anymore. I don't want to send Luila away, but I start trembling the moment I face him. Sunlight filtered through the leaves. The Duke was gently stroking Carson. Lydia stood to the side, reporting softly. Yes, Your Grace. She will likely request more magical tools. The Duke's gaze never left Carson. Is it because of that masslid dragon, Luila? Lydia answered affirmatively. Yes, for now, yes. The Duke's gaze turned to her. For now, Lydia explained. As I said before, every dragon has problems to some extent, but Luila's situation is the most urgent. The Duke said, so these tools are for Luila for now, but they can be used for other dragons in the future. Lydia answered affirmatively. That's right. Did you know that Lady Durna was injured by Luila? The Duke's hand paused on the dragon scales. Of course I knew. The corner of his mouth lifted in a cold smile. That's precisely why I personally dismissed the dragon trainer in charge of Luila. Lydia sighed. So he really was dismissed. The Duke added, but that dismissal was not what you imagine. Lydia was taken aback. What? The Duke said, the Durna family has been alchemists for generations, and such families usually pass down some secret arts. On ancient parchment scrolls are drawn complex alchemical circles and potion recipes. Now, what do you think would happen when a dragon trainer approaches Luila, trying to steal those secrets? Lydia's pupils contracted slightly. Don't tell me that dragon trainer. The Duke stated the facts calmly. Yes, he was acting under someone's orders. I heard his real mission was not just to steal secrets, but to completely eliminate the alchemist of the ducal house. Lydia pressed, does Lady Durna know about this? The Duke said, I explained it to her, but she seemed more shocked that Luila had attacked her. Lydia's profile was cast in shadow. She muttered to herself, for such a stupid reason. She crouched on the grass, her figure looking particularly small. Lady Durna, it wasn't entirely Luila's fault that he attacked her, but she still blames herself. A dragon that has lost its beloved master will not easily open its heart to others. And after experiencing all that, the wall Luila has built around his heart against Durna is immeasurably thick. Durna sat in her chair, her expression mournful. Sometimes, Luila's cries are completely different from usual. I don't know how to describe it, but just hearing it makes you want to cry along. That's why I don't want to find a new owner for Luila. Lydia listened quietly, a trace of compassion in her eyes. A bitter smile appeared on Durna's face. I want to tell him that he's not the only one who has lost someone they love, but I'm too clumsy. I can't convey this feeling. If you train him, will Luila change? Lydia lowered her head. Carson looked at the Duke, a questioning look in his eyes. What should I do? The Duke waved his hand. Do what you do best. Carson snuggled up to Lydia's side. Lydia gently patted his head. Did I make you worry? The Duke said, you're also Carson's exclusive dragon trainer. Lydia froze. It was too sudden. The Duke narrowed his eyes. That look in your eyes right now is very insolent. Lydia sighed softly. Since you put it that way, this proposal isn't bad for me either. Carson gets depressed easily. It's good for him to keep his distance. Lydia cleared her throat. Carson, she smiled. Do you feel neglected? Carson snorted excitedly, his eyes full of anticipation. Lydia smiled and soothed him. Yes, that's right. A good boy who waits patiently deserves a reward. Since it's my employer's request, of course I should agree. There's no benefit in provoking the Duke. I don't know why he suddenly changed his mind. The Duke crossed his arms, standing quietly under a tree, his gaze profound. Lydia showed a confident smile. She called out softly, Luila, how are you? Luila, inside the cage, let out a low growl filled with vigilance. Lydia's expression was helpless. Even with the calming incense lit, he's still the same as ever. Lydia turned. Russell, can the dragon trainer make the door transparent? Russell nodded. Of course. His hand, wearing a black glove, pressed on the lock. With a soft turn, the door instantly became transparent. Luella was curled up in a corner, trembling. Lydia watched quietly. Very well, then. She took a step forward. Russell looked uneasy. Are you really going to stay here? A smile spread across Lydia's face. Yes, except for the time I'm taking care of Carson. I'll be staying here. You can come find me anytime if there's a problem. Russell had been taking care of Luella to stabilize his mood. Because he wasn't attacked, Luella tolerated him, but he didn't seem to like him. Even if this is a necessary process, Luella probably won't welcome it. But he also needs to understand that not every human will actively approach him. Lydia struggled to move a pile of books. She placed the books heavily on the table. Luella's wings trembled slightly. It just needs time. Carson drew close to Lydia, sniffing her all over. Lydia laughed helplessly. Do I smell like another dragon? Carson snorted unhappily. Lydia mused, although Carson seemed a little unhappy. But this isn't a bad thing. If he can slowly get used to other dragons this way, it's a win-win. This is the second week of standing guard in front of Luella's enclosure. During this time, we've shared Luella's feeding duties. I'm responsible for the mornings, and Russell the dragon trainer is responsible for the evenings. Just by standing idly in front of the enclosure, Luella's tension seems to have eased. Lydia rested her head on the table. Luella lay quietly to the side. The distance between us has shortened a lot. Before, he would always curl up in the farthest corner. Now he even comes over to sniff me. Russell the dragon trainer walked by, pushing a food cart. Luella lifted his head warily. Lydia sat on the grass. I thought this would take months or even years. This is an unexpectedly good sign. Maybe it's time to talk to Lady Durna. A sound came from behind her. A low growl. She turned around abruptly. Carson was close in front of her, holding a small bouquet of flowers in his mouth. Lydia's eyes were full of amusement. Did you bring this for me? She lay on the grass. Who would have thought he was a fire dragon? A dragon this big is already over 10 years old. Sometimes these behaviors are just too cute. Lydia held the small white flower in her hand. But even so, Durna won't stay for long. Carson's gaze turned sharp. He let out a low roar. Lydia soothed him. I'm learning about the behavior of fire dragons through Carson. But to be honest, right now he's like a child throwing tantrum. Wait, a child? What if Carson and Luella's situations were reversed? Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled shadows. Lydia looked at Durna with concern. Are you really okay? You don't have to force yourself. Durna's hands were clenched tightly, her knuckles white. I'm Fine. It's not that I'm not scared, but I can handle it as long as I'm outside the enclosure. Lydia reached out and gently placed her hand on the back of Durna's. There's something I need to confirm, so I ask for your help, Lady Durna. If it becomes too much, please tell me immediately. I'll be right by your side. Don't overthink it. Just say hello and come out. Durna nodded. Okay. She took a deep breath and stepped forward into the enclosure area. A low roar came from the shadows. Luella revealed his icy blue eyes, full of hostility. Durna suppressed her fear, her voice trembling slightly. Hello, Luella. I'm here. I just came to say hello. I'm sorry I haven't come to see you in so long. Lydia stood outside the enclosure, quietly observing him. He's more wary of his owner than of a stranger. Luella has been through too much. More observation is needed, but his reaction is worse than I expected. Durna slowly approached Luella. Luella remained crouched on the ground. His eyes were cold. He suddenly opened his massive jaws and let out a sharp hiss. Durna stumbled back in fear. Lydia rushed forward. Lady Durna, that's enough. Luella's claw swiped down with a sound that tore through the air. Lydia held Durna tightly. This time, he's not just being dangerous. He's really trying to kill. The truly shocking one isn't Lady Durna. Lydia's gaze was cold and resolute. The truly shocking one is me. Lydia looked at the terrified Durna. Lady Durna. Durna held her head in her hands, her voice trembling. Yes. Lydia's tone was firm. Trust me. Act like you're trying to drive me away. Durna looked up, her eyes full of confusion. What? Lydia explained the plan. Just push me away, and I'll immediately back off. Once I'm gone from sight outside, you speak gently to Luella, and then walk out. Lydia's gaze became serious. The process will be scary, but it's a necessary step to improve your relationship with Luella. Durna gritted her teeth. Okay, she pushed Lydia. A flash of encouragement appeared in Lydia's eyes. A little harder. Durna hesitated, but Lydia's voice was unquestionable. It's okay. Even if I fall, you have to show him clearly that you're rejecting me. Durna took a deep breath and pushed with both hands. Luella watched this scene, confused. Durna suppressed her inner turmoil and announced loudly, I'm leaving now. A smile of approval appeared on Lydia's face. You did very well. She stood up. Understood. Lady Durna, call me anytime you need me. Fear and surprise mingled in Durna's eyes. A low growl rumbled in Luella's throat. A drop of cold sweat slid down Durna's cheek. Her voice trembled. I'm leaving right now. I was just passing by to check on you. I'm sorry. Luella froze for a moment. Derna left without looking back, her figure disappearing beyond the door. Luila stared at the empty doorway and let out a low whimper. Derna held a teacup, her expression downcast. I'm sorry. If only I could have done better. Lydia sat across from her, her tone gentle yet firm. This isn't your fault, Lady Derna. In fact, I don't think it's anyone's fault. The person who truly made a mistake isn't here. Of course, this requires effort from both sides, but right now, you are both victims. And Luila doesn't hate you. Lady Derna's brow furrowed, but he was so aggressive just now. Lydia's gaze was sharp, but his target was me. Derna's pupils contracted. Impossible. Lydia replied calmly. He's not usually like that, so I was surprised too. As long as you're not here, Luila will obey my commands, just as we tested earlier. Derna was thoughtful. That's right. But when I gave the order, he ignored it. Lydia looked directly at her. That's precisely the problem. Derna looked blank. What? Lydia explained. Luila doesn't acknowledge you as his master. There are many reasons behind this. The suffering he has endured is enough to explain it all. But more importantly, Lady Derna, you are afraid of Luila. This isn't a problem that can be solved in a day or two. If we want to improve the relationship, we need to continue. Can you endure training like today's? Derna's eyes filled with hope. Can my relationship with Luila really get better? Can I not give up on my father's dragon? Lydia's gaze was solemn. I can't give you any guarantees. She took Derna's hand. But as long as you don't give up, I will keep trying too. Derna lowered her head. I know I'm not good enough, but please help me. I don't want to give up on Luila just like this. Luila curled up on the ground, letting out a soft grunt. That weak child of the former human master. The one who used to tremble before me like a rabbit. Even after the former master disappeared, even with the pure dragon's blood, she couldn't protect anything. That pathetic human. A low growl rumbled in Luila's throat. He stared intently at Derna. Suddenly, he lunged at Derna. Derna screamed. No, Luila. Luila's movement paused. He let out a confused low cry. Derna stood before him, her expression calm. She called out softly, Luila. In a white dragon's blue eyes, the figure of Derna's father was reflected. I said no. You little rascal. Luila looked at the Derna before him, a weak human putting on a brave front. He suddenly raised his head and let out a deafening roar. Derna's voice rose above the dragon's roar. You are not allowed to yell at me. Lydia watched this scene from afar. As expected, suppressing Luila isn't easy. After all, he's been lording it over Derna for years. Even if the previous trainer hadn't played tricks, someone still would have gotten hurt. Lydia's gaze sharpened. It seems there's no other choice. A cold smile touched the corner of her mouth. Carson, as a senior, you need to give him a good scolding. Carson let out a low roar. Lydia called out softly, Lady Derna. Derna smiled in response. Trina Lydia. This is the Agrix dragon, Carson, right? Her tone was full of awe. He's truly magnificent. Luila's ears twitched slightly. He let out a confused, low sound, his claws pawing at the ground. Derna reached out and gently stroked Carson. Luila let out a hiss. Derna trembled slightly. Lydia stood to the side, arms crossed. Carson, don't stop. Luila needs to understand one thing right now. If you don't submit, the human who only has eyes for you might turn to another dragon. Lydia's eyes were cold. Anyway, it's the truth. If Luila doesn't change his attitude, even if Derna hesitates, I'll step in myself. Luila let out a shrill screech. Carson watched him coldly. Luila let out a whimper, his body trembling uncontrollably. There was a hint of worry in Derna's voice. Luila is like that. Lydia soothed her. He's just looking in that direction. It's all right, Lady Derna. Are you okay? A courage potion to overcome fear. Main ingredient, sun pepper seeds. Taking a large dose can lead to overconfidence and reckless behavior. Derna answered, luckily, the potion is working well. Besides my heart beating a little fast, I'm fine. Lydia pressed, are you really okay? In any case, you've worked hard today. As I said before, for the next week, you don't need to go to Luila's enclosure. Derna clasped her hands, her expression grave. But just now, Lydia's tone was firm. I will take full responsibility for Luila's well-being. Carson nuzzled Lydia obediently. Lydia smiled and stroked him. You're here. Well done. Derna bowed deeply. Then I'll leave Luila in your care. Lydia waved her hand. Don't worry. From now on, the one who should be worried is Luila. A week later, Derna came running. She called out urgently, Trainer Lydia. She ran up to Lydia, her tone full of concern. Is Luila okay? Has he been eating well? Has he been for a walk? Lydia interrupted her with a smile. You must be very curious. In that case, wouldn't it be faster to go see for yourself? Derna's face lit up with understanding. Let's go quickly. Lydia turned to lead the way, with Derna following closely behind. I was too confident just now, Lydia mused. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure how Luila will react, if this method doesn't work either. Derna nervously approached the enclosure, calling out softly, Luila, what's wrong? Are you hurt? Luila slowly raised his head, a purring sound coming from his throat. He suddenly got up and rushed towards Derna. He opened his mouth wide and let out a joyful roar, tears streaming from his eyes. Lydia stood to the side, letting out a soft breath. Derna was taken aback by this sudden display of affection. This was Lydia's suggestion. Can you try speaking to him gently? Derna's cheeks flushed slightly. She reached out a trembling hand and called Luila. Luila gently rested his head in her palm and closed his eyes. Derna was stunned by this sudden intimacy. She looked confused. What's going on? This is the first time Luila has ever been like this. Luila lay on the pile of grass, looking exceptionally docile. Lydia explained, it's nothing special. I just made him understand that you're the only one who cares for and loves him. To put it simply, I gave him a bit of shock therapy. This is just the beginning, Lady Derna. From now on, you need to build a good relationship. Derna whispered, thank you, trainer. Thank you so much. Lydia stretched her arms, her face beaming with joy. Great, we've passed the first hurdle. The important thing now is... The three apprentices looked up at Lydia, their eyes full of admiration. Lydia looked puzzled. Bruce, what's wrong? Bruce laughed heartily. I'm just so surprised. Lydia crossed her arms. Are you talking about Luila? Bruce nodded. Yes. Seeing Luila become more and more responsive, I'm just more and more impressed with you. Lydia smiled. She suddenly realized, wait, now that you mention it, I completely forgot about my promise to the Duke. Lydia turned to Bruce. Bruce, you've worked here the longest, right? Bruce answered, yes, for over 10 years. Lydia clasped her hands, smiling amiably. About that matter, if you have time, could we talk? Bruce scratched his head. Of course. Are you talking about the licenses? Lydia nodded in confirmation. Yes, I want to help the Duke's apprentice trainers get their licenses as soon as possible. Bruce's expression faltered. Lydia said, they just don't have licenses. Their experience and skills are enough to be official trainers. Once they get their licenses, their treatment will be completely different. Bruce's eyes lit up. That's a great suggestion. Lydia continued, right? As long as they get their licenses, even after a year, they won't have to worry about being kicked out of the duchy. Bruce looked troubled, but I think it might still be difficult. Lydia paused abruptly. She asked, puzzled why. Bruce looked awkward, his finger lightly touching his lower lip. Bruce scratched his head and said with a laugh, I'm grateful for your offer, but I think it's too difficult for me. Lydia was flustered by this unexpected answer. She forced a smile. Why would you think that? Bruce explained, I'm not married and live alone. I can live comfortably on my current salary. Besides, studying really isn't for me. There's also a gap between my experience and the knowledge in books. Lydia's gaze sharpened. She spread her hands. But didn't the Duke say, if we can't prove our abilities within a year, we'll be fired? Is there any clearer proof than this? Lydia's thoughts raced. Wait, this isn't just Bruce's problem. The trainers of the duchy have all been through a hellish test. They passed a loyalty test and are managing the dragons as apprentices. Wouldn't they have their own standards? Lydia pressed. Do the other apprentice trainers think the same way? Bruce averted his gaze. If you're asking if their opinions are similar to mine, generally yes. Lydia felt as if she'd been struck by lightning. It's over. Why did I just assume they'd be happy to get their licenses? I've already told the Duke. There's no way to back out now. Lydia's hand landed heavily on Bruce's shoulder. Mr. Bruce. Bruce jumped. Yes, Trainer Lydia? Lydia's gaze was as firm as iron. I want all the apprentice trainers to get their licenses and continue working at the duchy. That's why I offer to help. You've dedicated far more time to the Duke and the dragons than I have. If you get kicked out just because you don't have a license, that would be a real shame. Bruce was intimidated by her intensity and backed away repeatedly. Lydia pressed forward. I'm not ignoring your experience, but the content in the license textbooks is the accumulation of years of knowledge from hundreds, thousands of people like you. Sweat poured down Bruce's face, his brow furrowed. Lydia continued to apply pressure. Statistically speaking, the books are closer to the average. Of course, dragon training isn't always that simple. Bruce lowered his head. Wait, Trainer Lydia, it's not like that. In fact, everyone is very motivated to get their licenses. Lydia's expression froze instantly. What? Bruce pleaded, please calm down first. He hung his head and sighed deeply. There's a reason no one has asked for your help yet. It's because you're too busy. We felt that asking for your help would be a burden to you, so we all agreed. Wait, not only do you have to take care of all the dragons, but you also have to correct Luila's behavior. We really think you're amazing. Lydia tilted her head slightly. That's really nothing. Bruce immediately retorted. That's amazing. You saw the problem we couldn't improve for years. A hint of warmth flashed in Lydia's eyes. I really appreciate your consideration, but I'm truly fine. I might be speaking a bit incoherently, but everything I said before was sincere. You have such skills. It would be a waste to give up. If you get kicked out after a year, I'll be worked to death. Bruce had a moment of realization. That's true. Lydia made a suggestion. Then let's start small. How about 3 nights a week, studying a little at a time? Bruce hesitated slightly. As long as you don't find it too troublesome, we're all willing. He gathered his courage. In that case, I know this is a bit bold, but can we rely on you from now on? Lydia smiled, her voice gentle yet powerful. Of course. Their hands clasped firmly together. Night fell. Luila was humming a tune. A smile played on my lips. Have I been this happy recently? To be honest, I often thought that giving up on Luila might be better for him. I was gradually worn down by his endless vigilance and aggression. Even now, standing in front of him, I still remember the time I was injured. I'm not completely without fear, but at least now I can stroke Luila. This is all thanks to Trainer Lydia. Her gaze fell on the Duke, walking over from a distance. She hurried forward. Duke. The Duke looked at her. Have you handled everything? Durna handed over a box. Is everything you promised ready? The Duke took the box. Of course. You seem to be in a good mood. Are things going well with Luila? Durna replied excitedly. Yes, thanks to Trainer Lydia, I can even touch Luila's nose now. Isn't that amazing? The Duke chuckled. Trainer Lydia is indeed very capable. Durna's gaze went over his shoulder, and she suddenly urged him. She saw Lydia teaching the apprentices. The Duke explained, in exchange for taking care of Luila, she agreed to train the apprentices. Durna watched the scene through the window, a hint of surprise in her eyes. I didn't know about this. The Duke watched Lydia's figure. It's wonderful that we were able to hire a suitable trainer this time. Durna called out softly, Your Grace. The Duke spoke. What is it? Durna asked with concern. Are you still not sleeping well? The Duke turned abruptly and walked away quickly. That's not something you need to worry about. Durna followed closely. Even if the dosage is adjusted, long-term use of sleeping pills is not recommended. I'm working with a healer to create. The Duke's steps halted. The only place I can sleep peacefully is by Carson's side. Durna stopped walking, just as Luila opened his heart to me. If only the Duke's heart could open up one day, too. Thought how wonderful that would be. The night sky was dotted with stars. Lydia stood with her hands on her hips. All right, here's a problem. I came to bring the dragon food, but I found my employer instead. How should I describe my feelings? Carson let out a low growl. Lydia immediately soothed him. I know. I'll go in quietly. She tiptoed closer. She gazed at the Duke's sleeping profile. I don't want to admit it, but he's certainly handsome. It would be nice if his personality matched his face. Unfortunately, I'm not the female lead. Expecting a gentle side from him is too much of a luxury. He's sleeping so soundly. It seems wrong to wake him now, but I think it's time. After all, it's Carson's mealtime. He's a Grand Duke. But can he really just sleep here like this? The Duke woke up in an instant, flipping over with a dagger in hand. The cold blade pointed straight at Lydia's neck. Carson bit Lydia's collar and pulled her back. The Duke's eyes were cold. He demanded sharply, Who's there? Lydia's eyes widened in terror. Blood seeped from the cut on her neck. The Duke saw who it was, and his pupils constricted. Trainer Lydia. The Duke immediately withdrew the dagger, his tone full of apology. I'm sorry. Did I scare you? Lydia managed to speak. I came to Carson's lair and found you asleep, so I was going to wake you. The Duke's gaze fell on the blood on her neck. Are you all right? He hurriedly supported Lydia's shoulder. We must call someone for treatment immediately. Lydia struggled. I'm Fine. The Duke stood frozen in place. Lydia called out anxiously, Your Grace. She clapped her hands sharply. The Duke came to his senses. Trainer Lydia. Lydia nodded. Yes, it's me. She pressed a handkerchief to her neck. This is the Albarant Duchy in Carson's lair. The Duke looked at her. Go get treatment first. Lydia said, The bleeding has stopped. The Duke stood up, his tone leaving no room for argument. Go get treatment first. The Duke's movements were swift. He scooped Lydia up in his arms. Lydia struggled in his embrace. Whoa, I think I saw something I shouldn't have. I'd better pretend I didn't notice. The Duke's gaze fell on the scar. There's still a scar there. Lydia said, as a dragon trainer, it's a luxury to expect to have no scars. The Duke said, I will call a healer to heal the scar completely. This is an order. Lydia was taken aback. What's with him? Why does he have to give orders for something like this? Then I'll leave after feeding Carson. Carson let out a low growl. Lydia froze. The Duke's voice sounded again. With your personality, even if I gave an order, you wouldn't obediently go for treatment, would you? Lydia closed her eyes. Is this guy a mind reader? How'd he know? The Duke looked down at her. Is there anything else? Lydia clicked her tongue in annoyance. She turned her head away. Fine, but I can walk there myself. The Duke turned and left, still holding her. Lydia was as stiff as a board in his arms. Footsteps echoed in the magnificent hall. A cry of surprise came from a distance. Your Grace. The butler bowed deeply. He asked in a panic, Where have you come from? The Duke said, I was just with Carson. He gave an order. More importantly, go and fetch a priest who can use divine power. Trainer Lydia is injured. The butler cried out, Miss. Your neck is injured. Heavens, what happened? Lydia quickly explained, There's no need to be so dramatic as to call a priest. The Duke continued his orders. Be sure to prepare a meal for Trainer Lydia. The butler replied respectfully, As you command. Lydia quickly waved her hands. I'm actually very busy today. The Duke's eyes instantly turned icy. Are you refusing my command? command? Lydia clutched her stomach. Vav, I'm starving. The dining table was laden with a sumptuous feast, shimmering with an enticing glow. Lydia sat at the dining table, flanked by 2 maids. She held a knife and fork, her mouth stuffed with steak. Steak first thing in the morning. Am I being treated a little too well? Or is it just my imagination? The butler approached. Trainer Lydia, the Duke left a message for you. Carson has already been fed, and Luila is being looked after by her original trainer. So please, enjoy your meal in peace. Lydia's eyes lit up. Is this his apology for holding a knife to my neck? It's a bit over the top. A maid filled her glass with red wine. Considering how he usually is, I thought he'd just laugh it off. Lydia's cheeks puffed out. But maybe that's not it. He doesn't really need to feel that sorry. The Duke sat in a chair, recalling his conversation with Lydia. Next time you want to sleep with Carson, please tell me in advance. Don't just sneak into his enclosure without a word. The Duke asked, aren't you going to ask me why I slept there? Lydia couldn't help but let out a soft laugh. The Duke looked at her, puzzled. Lydia covered her mouth, her smile radiant. Anyone who's experienced Carson's scales, even once, should be able to guess the reason. The Duke sat in his chair. When she gave that answer, as if she understood everything. Why couldn't I deny it? The reason for sleeping beside Carson wasn't just because his scales were warm. Even so, I still can't fully trust Lydia. Weren't all those dragon trainers in the ducal estate good at pretending at first? Drawing my sword was justified. Since then, no one has dared to approach my bedroom carelessly. I summoned a priest to heal her and gave her food. That should be enough. The magnificent ducal manor was bathed in sunlight. Lydia staggered under the weight of a heavy pile of books. Teaching others is really a difficult task. She stopped by a long table where apprentice trainers were studying. Looks like I'll have to prepare extra materials for the Dragon Horse section. The questions I've received made me realize there are gaps in the content. The existing books don't seem to be enough. Should I go to the archives? But there's no guarantee they'll have the books I want there. I also need materials on the physical characteristics of the Agrix dragon. Lydia was buried in a pile of books. Luila's training is almost complete. It's time to start Carson's pre-cohabitation training. I need to request access to the archives and also discuss the training grounds. Looks like I'll have to see my employer. The Duke's figure appeared in the garden. Lydia walked up quickly. Your Grace, you're back a bit early today. When I was at the Shar Training Center, I didn't even see the director this often. She continued, it's about time for Carson's afternoon training and walk. The atmosphere has been awkward since this morning. The Duke's gaze fell on the books in her arms. What are those books? Lydia explained with a smile. These are materials to help the apprentices prepare for their qualification exam. The Duke eyed the thick pile of books. Is that so? It's a lot. Lydia continued. The scope of the Dragon Trainer qualification exam is very broad. You never know what questions will come up. I've only compiled the common points of error. It's already this much. The real problem is this isn't all. She gathered her courage. Your Grace, I have a few requests. The Duke responded with a blank expression. Speak. Lydia said, the records on the Agrix dragon. Were they lost with the death of its exclusive trainer? The Duke's eyes sharpened. And Lydia's voice was clear. So I need your knowledge. The Duke took the books from her hands. You mean the knowledge I gained while raising Carson? Lydia looked at him, completely bewildered. She stammered, why yes. But why are you taking those? Lydia was a bit flustered. Right now, there's nothing more valuable than a dragon trainer's experience. I'm not quite used to this kind of consideration. The Duke is the one chosen by the Agrix dragon. He's been raising Carson since he became sentient. Nothing is more useful than the experience of someone who's lived it. This is a completely reasonable request. But a bead of sweat trickled down Lydia's temple. With the Duke still not trusting me, it'll probably be difficult to get that kind of information. The Duke's voice cut in. It seems I'll need some time to organize my thoughts. Lydia was completely shocked. What? Why? The Duke's voice sounded a bit troubled. To suddenly talk about over 100 years of history, it's hard to know where to begin. What else? Didn't you say you had a few requests? Lydia came to her senses. Really? She composed herself. I'd like to request the construction of a training nest for Carson and permission to use the archives. The Duke held the books. I'll have the butler grant you access to the archives. But as for building a training nest for Carson, haven't we already built a separate nest? Lydia explained, that nest is for after he completes all his training. Right now, if Carson is with the other dragons, I can't guarantee his stability. Lydia placed her hands on her hips, looking confidently at him. As you know, Carson is the #1 most notoriously difficult dragon. The Duke's blue eyes flickered. That's right, and that's precisely why a dragon trainer must put in so much effort. A brilliant smile bloomed on Lydia's face. That's also one of the main reasons I became his exclusive trainer. The Duke turned his head. I heard Carson was brought over to correct Derna's dragon, but nothing major happened, right? Lydia nodded. Yes, but Carson is male and Luila is female. Although they are different species, male dragons are generally more tolerant of female dragons that have laid eggs. The Duke's gaze was probing. Are you saying that Carson has taken a liking to that female dragon? Carson's pupils suddenly contracted. He let out a questioning growl. He abruptly spread his wings, his tail slamming heavily onto the ground, and let out a deafening roar. Lydia crossed her arms, watching the scene with great interest. Wow, this is the first time I've seen this kind of reaction. The Duke watched the enraged Carson. He's saying no. Lydia was thoughtful. Even if he doesn't like her, he didn't show any aggression. Carson let out a low roar, flames churning in his throat. Lydia looked at Carson. Could it be that he's shy? The Duke fell into thought. It's more like he's been found out and is at a loss for words. The Duke sat on his ornate throne, writing on a document with a quill. The butler came forward to report. Trainer Lydia has entered the archives. The Duke asked, today as well? The butler nodded. Yes, Your Grace. The Duke's gaze was deep. Frankly, just because Carson has accepted her doesn't mean we can stop our surveillance. Lydia probably doesn't know. To ensure she is under surveillance at all times. In the shadows, the Watcher's eyes gleam coldly. It would be utterly foolish to let our guard down around someone new to the Albrandt family. But according to the reports so far, Lydia has shown no personal motives, focusing only on the dragons. Can I really trust her? What if all of this is just a clever ploy? I can't rule out that possibility. In the past, there have been plenty who lay low for years, waiting for us to let our guard down before making a move. To this day, there are no records whatsoever on the Agrix dragon, Carson. If she were to one day betray and harm Carson, the Duke's eyes turned icy. I would never forgive myself. A knock came at the door. Your Grace, it's Bhaskar. The Duke answered without looking up. Come in. Bhaskar walked in, holding a stack of documents. The Duke looked at him. You brought him today. Bhaskar nodded. Yes, it was just a coincidence. Emerald. A dark green leopard appeared out of thin air, its form agile. This is the Panthera Forerunner, Emerald. The Duke said, still not used to it? Bhaskar explained, he rarely shows himself and doesn't proactively approach people, as long as his bowl is filled, but he'll eat by himself. Bhaskar sighed. Sometimes I even forget he exists. Emerald rubbed his head against his leg, letting out a low purr. A trace of resignation crossed Bhaskar's face. The Duke asked, are there reports? Bhaskar placed the documents on the table. Yes, I brought some files that require regular review. The Duke rested his chin on his hand. Anything noteworthy? Bhaskar replied, the dragon management has entered a stable phase. Management efficiency has improved, and the apprentice trainers are also more satisfied. The Duke said, is that so? Bhaskar explained, yes. Now that licensed professionals are carrying out the tasks, everything has stabilized. Even the most sensitive and difficult female masslid dragon has been corrected. The wild dragon horses captured during the escape incident are also being successfully tamed. This is all thanks to Trainer Lydia. The Duke spoke slowly. Do you trust her? Bhaskar was taken aback. If you're talking about trust, can you guarantee she won't change like those infiltrators? The Duke's profile was stern. Can you guarantee she won't change like those infiltrators? Bhaskar admitted frankly, if that is what your Grace is referring to, then not yet. In that case, why don't I personally monitor Trainer Lydia? And there is something I'd like to discuss with you. He glanced down at the leopard by his feet. Don't you need a reason to trust Trainer Lydia? Bhaskar had a gentle smile on his face. I also hope that someone like Trainer Lydia won't betray us. If you find it difficult to decide alone, why not leave it to me? Lydia looked astonished. The Panthera Forerunner. You mean training him? Bhaskar clasped his hands in front of him. Yes, that's right. A smile that was hard to refuse spread across his face. Would it be a bother for you? Lydia was a bit flustered. She quickly waved her hands. That's not what I meant. How should I put this? It's just that I never expected to be training a Panthera Forerunner, a species known for being fiercely loyal to its master and never leaving their side. And Bhaskar is a key figure who manages the duchy's affairs when the Duke is away. A person of his status couldn't have possibly called me here just for something like this. Lydia's thoughts cleared in an instant. She forced a smile. Could you tell me what kind of training is needed? I haven't heard of any particular problems with the Panthera Forerunner that Lord Bhaskar is raising. Bhaskar softly called Emerald. From the shadows behind him, a massive leopard-like creature appeared silently, its dark green fur covered in spots. It had a single horn on its forehead and a pair of jet black wings folded against its back. It padded forward silently, its emerald eyes locked on Lydia. Lydia held her breath. Wow. Bhaskar placed a hand on his chest. I think I may have expressed myself poorly. Training is indeed necessary, but it's not that Emerald has any flaws. It's that I have a flaw. Lydia asked tentatively, you have a hard time understanding Emerald's intentions, don't you? Bhaskar affirmed, yes, that's right. He won't even appear unless I'm alone with him, and we almost never have the chance to be alone. Even when we are, his reactions are very cold. Lydia listened quietly, her gaze fixed on Emerald. Emerald walked straight toward Lydia. Lydia held out a hand, signaling for Bhaskar to be quiet. Bhaskar's hand froze in midair, his expression complex. Lydia slowly sat down. Emerald approached meekly. Lydia closed her eyes, feeling his proximity. Emerald closed his eyes as well. Lydia said, he's very wary. You formed a bond with a wonderful dragon. Bhaskar watched the scene. I must admit, I didn't expect you to just sit down when Emerald approached. Lydia opened her eyes. If you want to be a dragon trainer, you need to be a little bold. Besides what you just mentioned, is there anything else that worries you? Or anything you hope to improve? Bhaskar sighed. I want to know what I can do to make Emerald happy. To be honest, I'm not sure if I'm a good master. We've been together for many years, but rather than a master and his partner dragon, we're more like roommates who have no interest in each other. It feels like I provide him with food and shelter, and in exchange, Emerald provides me with protection. Lydia was thoughtful. I see what you mean. In that case, I'll need to observe Emerald to understand his preferences. Is that all right? A slight smile touched the corner of Bhaskar's mouth. Of course, if it will truly help. I'd be happy to. Lydia added, in that case, I might have to stay by your side for a while. I'll do my best not to disturb your work. Was that expression just now my imagination? Bhaskar smiled. Quite the contrary. I'm the one who's worried about disturbing you, Trainer Lydia. Lydia quickly replied, it's no problem. This is my job after all. Bhaskar took her hand. Then I'll be in your care for this period. Bhaskar sat at his desk, his quill scratching across a document, pretending to do something else to lower Emerald's guard. Her reasoning is very persuasive. If she were truly, as the Duke suspects, attempting to leak the family's internal secrets, she could have used this as a pretext to access documents. It's a good opportunity, after all. Yet, unexpectedly, there is nothing suspicious about Lydia's behavior. It even makes me wonder why the Duke is being so cautious. It's only been a few days, but in this short time, her interest is clearly only in dragons, because the focus of her gaze is always Emerald. Other than that, the only thing I've discovered is that she doesn't seem to like being indoors very much. Lydia yawned. Bhaskar spoke up. Trainer Lydia, how are things? Any progress? Lydia snapped back to attention. If you're asking about Emerald, yes, I've made progress. Bhaskar looked up. Is that so? The documents had no loopholes when I last checked. The magical device I installed beforehand also showed no unusual activity. If she hasn't made a move because she hasn't had the chance, she should be using Emerald as an excuse to extend the observation period. Am I overthinking this? Was the Duke wrong? Lydia walked to Bhaskar's desk. Based on my observations these past few days, you just need to when Emerald is looking at you. Not pet him. That's all. Bhaskar looked completely blank. That's it. Lydia answered affirmatively. If you're asking for a way to show affection to Emerald, yes. That's it. To put it simply, it's like the difference between a dog and a cat. Bhaskar looked puzzled. A dog and a cat? Lydia explained. For example, the Duke's dragon, Carson, is more like a dog. When he wants to be petted, he'll proactively nuzzle his head against you. But Emerald isn't as direct as Carson. He's just more emotionally stable, and his way of expressing himself is more subtle and harder to notice. For instance, when Emerald just looks at you quietly, the meaning behind that gaze is that he wants to be petted. Lydia suggested with a smile, would you like to try petting Emerald now? Bhaskar reached out and gently stroked the top of Emerald's head. Is it really just this? Emerald suddenly leaned his head against Bhaskar, nuzzling him affectionately. Bhaskar's body instantly stiffened. Emerald let out a contented purr. He narrowed his eyes, enjoying Bhaskar's touch. Bhaskar's movements were very skilled. Lydia said softly, you seem quite used to petting him. Has Emerald become less expressive than when he was young? Bhaskar smiled faintly. It seems I can't hide anything from the eyes of a professional trainer. Yes, he has indeed become much more reserved than when he was young, and compared to when he was a cute little kitten. A knowing smile appeared on Lydia's face. Has he become threatening now? Bhaskar said, dignified, but hard to approach. Lydia's gaze sharpened. I understand your caution. Even if Emerald meekly accepts his master's touch, he is ultimately a dragon. A dragon that can easily tear a human to shreds. Accidents always happen the moment you let your guard down. She turned to Bhaskar. Lord Bhaskar, do you have a moment? Bhaskar replied, Idol. Lydia continued, I know the nature of your work. That requires you to stay indoors for long periods. But taking Emerald out for a walk occasionally would be very helpful for him. What do you think? Bhaskar mused a walk. All right. Lydia's tone was excited. Doesn't Emerald, who is always protecting you, deserve a chance to breathe? Bhaskar looked at her. If that's the case, Lydia stretched her arms under the sun, letting out a cheerful cry. This is what it means to be alive. Although I was outside before when Carson was looking after Leela, those days of only being able to observe from indoors, that was sheer torture. I bet Emerald doesn't hate this either. Dragons should be running and jumping around outside. Do you think being a close guard is enough for him? Emerald let out a low growl in agreement. Bhaskar was thoughtful. Come to think of it, I seem to have always used being busy with work as an excuse to neglect Emerald. Lydia expressed her understanding. You're very busy, I get it. Seriously, Bhaskar works way too hard. He's definitely earning his salary. He's practically pouring his soul into it. I'd rather feed 30 dragons myself than ever do that kind of work. I couldn't do it. Maybe Emerald understands your situation, which is why he doesn't ask for much. When Emerald looks at you, it's because he wants something. When he comes to your feet, it means don't ignore me. Lydia suggested, at times like that, you should pet him or occasionally give him a treat. Coming out for a walk together like this. That's my advice. Bhaskar was silent for a moment. Is that enough? Lydia nodded. Yes, it's better to give him more affection during walks. Just because he's not good at expressing himself doesn't mean he doesn't have feelings. Lydia gestured for Bhaskar to look. Look, Emerald is rolling around on the grass. Butterflies are fluttering around him. He looks happy, doesn't he? Bhaskar's gaze softened. I see. Lydia put her hands on her hips, a satisfied smile on her face. Yes, and you too should while walking with Emerald. That relax properly. Working all the time will that suffocate you. Bhaskar looked at her. It seems observing Emerald was quite an ordeal for you. Lydia was suddenly startled. Anyway, you just need to remember that point. Bhaskar tilted his head. Is it really that simple? Lydia explained. Emerald never had any behavioral problems to begin with. It's just that you didn't quite know how to interact with him. If you have any other questions, you can come to me anytime. I also got to observe a precious panther of Forerunner. So, Bhaskar let out a light laugh. Trainer Lydia, you're a truly interesting person. Lydia looked confused. What do you mean by that? Bhaskar suddenly bowed deeply. First, I must apologize to you. Lydia took a startled step back. Lord Bhaskar. Bhaskar continued. Actually, the real reason I asked you to train Emerald was to have an opportunity to be with you. Lydia's pupils contracted sharply. What? Her voice trembled slightly. Are you saying it was to monitor me? Bhaskar straightened up, placing a hand on his chest. Regrettably, yes. Please forgive my impertinence. Lydia's gaze sharpened. But this is strange. Why are you telling me this so easily? Bhaskar's gaze was frank. Based on my observations, Trainer Lydia, you have no ulterior motives. You're simply a person who genuinely loves dragons and has made it your profession. Am I right? Lydia's body froze. She looked down, silent. Bhaskar continued. Trainer Lydia, do you know why His Grace entrusted the Panther of Forerunner to me? Lydia answered hesitantly. Isn't it for safety and protection? Bhaskar confirmed her guess. That's right, and that also means that in this vast duchy, that he trusts no one. Lydia remembered the Duke's uncle, Yuri's Alberant's story. Bhaskar said, I imagine you've already heard about it from the Duke. Afterwards, Yuri's Alberant and his wife were punished. The matter seemed to be over. But Bhaskar pushed up his glasses. The Alberant duchy was thrown into turmoil. The dark shadows of countless nobles were stirring restlessly. How many people do you think would pass up this opportunity? The ducal title in the hands of a 12-year-old child was, in anyone's eyes, too immense and too tempting. The young duke knelt on the ground, clutching the young dragon Carson tightly, surrounded by bloodstains. He was willing to stain his hands with blood for it. I know very well what it's like to be suspected, but I hope you can understand that we had no other choice at the time. Lydia's expression grew increasingly icy, but this makes me understand even less. Why are you telling me all this? It's been too short a time, hasn't it? I've only been employed for a few months. Have I earned your trust so quickly? Bhaskar smiled faintly. Of course, for an ordinary person, that would be the case. But an ordinary person wouldn't feed 30 dragons all by themselves. Lydia was momentarily speechless. Why bring that up now? Back then, everyone doubted my abilities. I had to prove them wrong. And get some fresh air, too. Bhaskar added, besides, someone with ulterior motives would never spend an entire month correcting a dragon that once severely injured its master. You researched information, compiled materials, and even worked overtime to teach the apprentice trainers so they could pass their qualification exams. How do you explain that? Lydia's mouth fell open in astonishment. How do you know all that? That's my job. A licensed, employed dragon trainer is supposed to do those things. Bhaskar asked, then why didn't you even touch the important documents in my office? Lydia blurted out, why would I touch them? If I accidentally mess them up, the person who has to clean up would have to do twice the work. Bhaskar's smile softened. It's precisely because of things like this. You're the responsible older sister type. If you really had ulterior motives, there were actually many opportunities you could have taken. So what reason do I have left not to trust you? Lydia covered her face. Damn, now that he puts it that way, I'm at a loss for words. Bhaskar suddenly dropped to one knee. Trainer Lydia. Lydia jumped in surprise. His Grace will continue to doubt you. After all, it took many years for even me, who grew up with him, to earn his trust. I know this is a selfish request, but could I ask you to understand his attitude? A cold voice suddenly cut in. What are you two doing here? The two of them spun around abruptly to see the Duke standing not far away. The Duke's eyes were dark. Didn't I just ask what you were doing here? Why did the Duke suddenly appear? Lydia and Bhaskar hurriedly bowed. Greetings, Your Grace, Duke Alberant. Lydia raised her head, a hint of wariness in her eyes. The Duke's gaze swept between her and Bhaskar. Bhaskar's words echoed in her mind. His Grace will continue to doubt you. After all, it took many years for even me, who grew up with him, to earn his trust. I know this is a selfish request, but could I ask you to understand his attitude? Lydia's jaw tightened slightly. She fell silent. The Duke's voice broke the stalemate. Lydia, aren't you supposed to be on duty? Lydia immediately replied, Lord Bhaskar requested dragon training. I was assisting him. The Duke's gaze flickered past her. Is that so? It seems your workload isn't as heavy as I thought. Lydia's expression froze. Wait, I think I just heard something ominous. The Duke and Lydia stood facing each other, the air seemingly frozen. The Duke crossed his arms, a hint of mockery in his tone. Taking on another dragon so easily. It seems I've severely underestimated your abilities. Lydia hurriedly tried to explain, Your Grace, it's not like that. Lord Bhaskar just needed a little advice, so I agreed. The Duke's questioning pressed on. For a little advice, you stayed with Bhaskar for an entire week? Lydia bit her lip, speechless. He knows exactly what happened. Why is he being like this? The Duke's sharp gaze scrutinized her. A blush rose on Lydia's cheeks, and she averted her eyes. Bhaskar spread his arms, trying to ease the tension. Now, please, both of you calm down. He turned to the Duke. Your Grace, what Trainer Lydia said is true. Thanks to her, that my relationship with Emerald has improved a great deal. I am very satisfied. It was my oversight not to report this to you separately. Could I ask for your magnanimity just this once? The Duke responded with a blank expression. Is that so? Lydia's gaze turned to Bhaskar, a warm feeling welling up inside her. Bhaskar, the Duke's profile was cast in shadow, his expression unreadable. His eyes grew even colder. Lydia felt an invisible pressure. On what grounds? What on earth did I do wrong? He took a sharp step forward. Your Grace. Lydia looked up, meeting the Duke's gaze directly. If you have a complaint, please state it plainly. The duty of the exclusive dragon trainer is to manage all the family's dragons. You must be clear on this point. Helping Lord Bhaskar's dragon is also part of my job. So what exactly is your problem, you damn employer? The Duke's eyes flickered, as if slightly surprised. He turned and walked away. Bhaskar covered his mouth with his hand, suppressing a laugh. I'm very sorry. However, you'll be experiencing more unreasonable things in the future. Lydia's anger flared instantly. Is the Duke's tyranny going to continue? Bhaskar chuckled. I apologize for that in advance. Lydia pressed a hand to her forehead. Right now, I just want to resign and escape the ducal estate. Bhaskar said, but that impulse probably won't last long. Lydia looked up in confusion. Why? Bhaskar smiled, a hint of understanding in his eyes. Because Carson wouldn't accept it. Lydia asked softly, is that all? Bhaskar lowered his head. Can you imagine it? A life where the slightest mistake could mean death. He has to be suspicious of every piece of clothing he wears, every bite of food he eats, even the place where he sleeps, and every person he trusts. Bhaskar bowed slightly, his tone grave. And you say, is that all? Carson is by the Duke's side. I want you to remember that it was that dragon who accompanied him through those difficult years. Lydia sat alone on the grass. Except for Carson, the Duke had spent his entire life in suspicion, relying only on a dragon, not people, suspecting everyone who got close to him. What kind of life would that be? It's the perfect backstory for some protagonist. If I had read about such a setup in a novel, I probably would have just found it interesting and immersive. But now a living, breathing person has such a past. The Duke held the reins, a faint smile on his face, basking in the sunlight with Carson beside him. He dismounted from Carson's back, landing steadily. He walked over to Lydia's side. What are you thinking about? Lydia turned abruptly. Your Grace, is your flight finished? The Duke crossed his arms. As you can see, is Bhaskar's training request complete? Lydia stood up. Why was he asking this? She spoke slowly for now, yes. The Duke pressed on. Does it require continuous cooperation like with Durna? Lydia explained it's not like that. In Lord Bhaskar's case, I just need to teach him how to praise Emerald. There's nothing else that needs correcting. The Duke said Bhaskar is so busy with work, I was worried there might be a problem like with Durna. It seems I was overthinking it. I'm glad that even though he's so busy, he hasn't forgotten to care for his dragon. Lydia looked up. It's not like that. The Duke was taken aback. What? Lydia's gaze was sharp. If Emerald weren't a Panther of Forerunner, and if Bhaskar hadn't raised him since he was young, I dare say an accident would have happened long ago. Over the past week, I realized something while observing Emerald. Bhaskar has too much work. He simply has no time. In the end, he can only neglect Emerald. Emerald is loyal to Lord Bhaskar and sees him as a parent. But I can't guarantee how much longer his patience will last. If Lord Bhaskar could spend a little more time caring for Emerald, perhaps. The Duke's voice grew cold. Lydia, Dragentrina, you are making a request that exceeds your authority. Lydia looked up in shock. What? The Duke's tone was laced with sarcasm. Just because you've become the ducal family's exclusive dragon trainer, does that mean you can arrogantly interfere in matters outside your duties? Or perhaps, he tilted his head slightly, his eyes cold. Do you have another reason? Lydia's pupils contracted. Another motive? She forced herself to remain calm. I don't understand what you mean. The Duke said, I told you to train the dragons, not to focus your attention elsewhere. Lydia's fists clenched. I'd hoped it wouldn't be like this. She turned to the Duke. Your Grace. The Duke responded calmly. What is it? Lydia's anger burned. Do you really think that? I'm busy enough just managing the dragons. Where'd I find the time to deal with some emotional affair? I don't even have a single second. The more I think about it, the more absurd it feels. What on earth made you think there's something personal between me and Bhaskar? Besides, I'm running around busy every day. I have no time to think about anything else. Where in my daily schedule is there room for romance? This is my first time dealing with a Panther of Forerunner. This rare dragon species is usually raised by nobles, and information about them is extremely limited. Just observing this precious dragon already takes up all my time. What kind of person do you take me for? Differences in perspective are sometimes unavoidable. The Duke remained silent. Thompson's words surfaced in Lydia's mind. He had sneered, no matter how you pretend, in the end, you're just a woman. I could tell just by seeing you hesitate when faced with such an opportunity. But this kind of difference isn't always pleasant. Lydia gritted her teeth. teeth. Your Grace, you hire me because I'm a dragon trainer. That's right, I'm a dragon trainer. I am caring for Lord Boskar's dragon in my capacity as a dragon trainer, not sharing a space with him as the woman named Lydia. If I were just a commoner from an orphanage, how could the ducal estate possibly have hired me? I have always been loyal to my duties, and I intend to continue to be. She clenched her fist tightly. So, if you have even the slightest shred of respect for me as a dragon trainer, I hope you will refrain from saying such things in the future. Lydia looked directly at him, her gaze firm. Even if you're my employer, I cannot simply laugh off remarks that disregard my hard work. The Duke stood alone in his lavish office. He leaned over, bracing himself on the desk. Am I going mad? He gritted his teeth, his expression dark and unreadable. Why did I say something like that just now? I already knew that Bhaskar was going to investigate Lydia. Yes, I knew. So why did seeing them together bother me so much? Was it because she was smiling? That smile on Lydia's face, one she had never shown me. The Duke touched his lips with a gloved finger. How absurd. Am I going mad? Things have finally settled down, yet I'm starting to have these wild thoughts. Kindness is poison. Opening your heart is a luxury. Letting down your guard is a one-way path to death. How many times have I been deceived by their appearances and opened my heart only to see them bare their fangs? Swallowing poison, bearing curses. Sometimes, I can even feel the cold blade piercing my body. But why did seeing her with Bhaskar bother me so much? Lydia's words echoed in his mind. Your Grace, you hired me because I am a dragon trainer. I'm a dragon trainer. I am caring for Lord Bhaskar's dragon in my capacity as a dragon trainer. If you have even the slightest shred of respect for me as a dragon trainer, this is my final request and my final warning. But why, when I saw her draw that line and show a genuine anger I had never seen before, did I feel so relieved? When it comes to Lydia, the dragon trainer, I can always find a reason to apologize. The morning sun shone on the windmill. The caw of a crow broke the silence. Lydia turned her head, her hand unconsciously touching her cheek. Damn it, I really don't want to see him yet. It's been several hours since I yelled at him, but work still has to be done. Seeing him still being difficult. Anyway, this twisted Duke. How does he have connections with the dwarves? A red-haired, red-bearded dwarf was all smiles. He enthusiastically extended his hand. A pleasure to meet you. My name is Ukandil from the Ensos Mountains. It's an honor. Lydia bowed slightly. Hello, I am the Albarant ducal family's exclusive dragon trainer. My name is Lydia. Dwarves, a race that only appeared in the novels of my past life. Short in stature, love to drink, have thick beards, and possess exquisite craftsmanship unmatched by humans. That's what I remember, and he's exactly as I imagined. Lydia wore a professional smile. His Grace said he needed the exclusive dragon trainer's opinion. Ukandil responded cheerfully, ah, yes. This cage is being built for his Grace's dragon training. Ukandil glanced sideways, stealing a peek at the Duke. Why is he so gloomy today? He cleared his throat. Ahem. Dragon trainer Lydia, what else do you think is needed? Lydia looked troubled. Excuse me, I can't read the blueprints. Could you explain how you plan to build it? Ukandil confidently spread out the drawings. It's simple. First, to prevent the dragon from feeling confined, the width will be about this much. The stone trough and water trough will be installed here. The dragon gate is here. I'll install a triple lock, so there's no chance of it opening by accident. Lydia nodded repeatedly as she listened. Hand-built by a dwarf. That kind of accident would never happen. Professional mode activated. Ukandil burst out laughing. This young lady really knows how to talk. Lydia pointed to a spot on the blueprint. I'd like to add a transparent wall here, surrounding the entire cage. Ukandil frowned. That would increase the workload significantly. Would 2 gates be too much trouble? Lydia said, the goal of this training is to have Carson live with the other dragons. Instead of having the dragon live here directly, it would be better to have Carson stay, for short periods, first to get familiar with his companions. That would be the best arrangement. Ukandil added, in that case, it would be best to add magic. While they're transparent materials, their durability would definitely be lower. Lydia was startled. Magic? How much would that cost? Ukandil mused. However, for short-term training, isn't it a bit wasteful to use expensive materials? Lydia sighed. I didn't consider the cost. What do you think, your Giara? He turned his head, their faces almost touching. Ukandil's voice boomed like thunder. Lydia, dragon trainer. We plan to bring more dragons to the ducal territory. Will you continue to commission us then? Lydia snapped back to her senses. If that's the case, yes, I think they could be very useful. The Duke spoke up that it's best to build it with sturdy materials. As for making it transparent, we can solve that with magic. Ukandil's eyes lit up and he nodded repeatedly. Magic is so convenient. He laughed heartily. All right, I made a note of it. He looked at the two of them, a meaningful smile on his face. Ah, to be young. Lydia pressed a hand to her forehead, wishing she could just disappear on the spot. The Duke suddenly spoke. Lydia, dragon trainer. Lydia flinched and turned to answer. Yes, your Grace. The Duke said, let's talk. It won't take long. Lydia followed behind him. I see. What on earth does he want to say this time? The fountain sparkled in the sunlight. The Duke and Lydia sat side by side on a bench. Silence spread between them. Lydia was breaking down internally. Why is he pausing for so long before speaking? I can't take this anymore. She forced a smile. What you wanted to say was. The Duke paused. He began slowly. Lydia, about the other day. He spoke in a low voice, I'm sorry. Lydia had a smile on her face, but her eyes were bewildered. Did I hear that right? The Duke actually apologized? The Duke rested his hand on his chin. Why said that day hurt you? I want to apologize for my rash words and actions. Lydia lowered her eyes. I never expected this kind of apology. She clenched her hands. It hasn't even been a day, and the Duke is apologizing first. She spoke slowly. You don't have to apologize to me, Your Grace. I did say I was unhappy, but I am, after all, your exclusive dragon trainer. Your employee, so you don't need to bow your head so easily. The Duke stared at her. What? Lydia turned her face slightly, a bead of sweat trickling down her temple. I am not in a position to accept your apology. The Duke said, if you say the ducal estate's only exclusive dragon trainer is insignificant, that would mean my judgment is worthless. She gritted her teeth. Damn it, that's not what I meant. Lydia continued to explain. Actually, those kinds of words are common for trainers of medium and large dragons. What I said to you was just a conditioned reflex from the training grounds. So please don't mind it. She stood up. I'm the one who should apologize. As your exclusive dragon trainer, I was rude to you. I apologize for my extreme behavior. She bowed formally. So please, do not bow your head to me. Lydia's vision swam. This is so embarrassing. Could the Duke have some other motive for suggesting this? The Duke's words certainly made me unhappy, but I never thought he would apologize. Why? The Duke is a powerful, high-ranking noble, after all. Don't all nobles have that? How dare a mere commoner attitude? Look at that Thompson. Did he ever say a single word of apology? After getting used to people like that, facing a Duke like this. Frankly, I'm confused. I'd even prefer him to be characteristically arrogant. I'm not used to this and don't know how to respond. The Duke's voice sounded again. You are the only certified exclusive dragon trainer of the Albrant family. A trainer who can handle an Agrix dragon is priceless. So don't call yourself a mere commoner. I'm not saying this to belittle your efforts at the ducal estate. Just because you're used to certain things doesn't mean they're good things. I was indeed rude, which is why I'm apologizing. I hope you can accept it. Lydia flinched slightly. The sunlight fell on him, as if coating him in a halo of light. She bowed deeply again. Just acknowledging my existence is more than I could ask for. A barely perceptible smile appeared on the Duke's face. Lydia said, well then, I have a class for the apprentice dragon trainers, so I'll take my leave. The Duke turned his head. All right. Lydia turned and walked away quickly. The Duke's gaze followed her. Why did I feel displeased just now? Why does Lydia belittle herself so much? A stifling heat rose in my chest. Why did that stifling feeling vanish the moment she said she was grateful for my acknowledgement? I want to know what on earth I'm thinking. Is my reaction just because I've finally found the partner I've been dreaming of? The Duke's eyes grew deep. Or was there another reason? A dragon trainer was riding a white dragon beast. The dragon beast reared up, letting out a screech. If you were going to fall, you would have fallen already. Getting a wild beast used to carrying a rider is a difficult and dangerous task. The beast's back is much higher than you'd think. The dragon beast was panting heavily, sweat pouring down. What's more, this was an adult dragon beast raised in the wild. The trainer leaned down, gently stroking the dragon beast's neck. Good boy. If you want to live here, you have to get rid of that stubborn temper. Lydia watched quietly, a look of approval in her eyes. He can actually endure and control the dragon when it's deliberately acting up. That kind of skill isn't something you can do just by having a license. The dragon beast stomped hard, its forelegs landing heavily. The trainer gripped the reins tightly, struggling to keep his balance. Calm down. He looked nervously at Lydia. Am I really going to be okay? Lydia's tone was firm. Don't worry, you'll be fine. The trainer walked over quickly, greeting them warmly. Miss Derna, Instructor Lydia. Lydia said, I was just observing the riding training. The trainer was a little surprised. Really? He asked, slightly nervous. How is it? Is there anything that needs improvement? Lydia smiled and shook her head. Actually, I wanted to ask for your advice. In that situation, I would have fallen off at least once. Next time, could you teach me some of your riding techniques? I feel like you can't hold on with strength alone. The trainer's eyes widened in surprise. Of course. Anything for you, Instructor Lydia. I'd do anything. That trainer's skill is second only to that. That pretentious captain. Derna was taken aback. Instructor Lydia? Lydia looked at her. What's wrong? She touched her nose, her fingertips feeling a warm liquid. She smiled and waved her hand. I'm Fina. The two of them frowned. What are you talking about? You're suddenly having a nosebleed. The crowd immediately grew agitated. What's going on? Quick, get her a chair. Oh my God, Instructor Lydia, you've been too tired lately. Someone call a healer. Lydia was surrounded by the crowd, holding a handkerchief to her nose with a dazed expression. What? This scene feels strangely familiar. Lydia raised a hand, trying to calm the panicked crowd. Everyone, please calm down. It's just overwork. There's no need to worry so much. She waved at the crowd. It's nothing. Everyone go back to work. Bruce's face was full of worry. But Instructor, you've been helping us prepare materials for the license exam. Lydia smiled and replied, that doesn't take much time. And that's not the reason. Don't worry. It's just a sudden thing. Bruce insisted, at least go see a healer. Lydia held up a finger, her gaze turning sharp. This is not the time to be standing around idly. Isn't it about time to prepare the feed? Hearing this, the trainers tensed up and immediately dispersed. Lydia turned to Derna, her tone softening. I'm sorry, Mississippi. I'll wash the handkerchief and return it to you. Derna clasped her hands together, saying urgently, "Don't worry about the handkerchief. Wait here a moment. I'll go find something to stop the bleeding." Lydia looked at the blood stain on the handkerchief. "I have had a few more worries lately, but I didn't feel that tired. Getting a nosebleed like this, it's as if I'm desperately showing off how hard I'm working. It's so embarrassing." The study was filled with books, brightly lit by a lamp. Lydia was hunched over her desk, writing furiously, the tip of her pen flying across the paper. A drop of fresh blood fell without warning. Lydia sat at her desk, her back rigid. It's happening again. Since last week, my nose bleeds whenever I concentrate a little or feel tired. Although it's not a lot of blood. Lydia tilted her head back, pinching the bridge of her nose with her fingers. Really, why the nose of all things? She lowered her hand, her gaze falling on the documents. If His Grace finds out about this, just thinking about it is exhausting. Good thing I didn't stain the documents. She held up a thick stack of papers. It was the summary of practice exam questions she had stayed up all night to organize. Lydia walked down a magnificent corridor, sunlight streaming through the windows. The next exam is next spring. It falls right within the 1-year grace period His Grace mentioned. Luckily, there are 2 chances. It's hard to find trainers of that level again. As long as they get their licenses and decide to stay at the ducal estate, my workload will be greatly reduced. It will also be a great help to the ducal family. She hugged the documents in her arms, her gaze determined. Let's push a little harder. Lydia bumped headfirst into a solid chest. She let out a cry. "Oh, Mr. Bhaskar." Bhaskar looked down at her, his eyes concerned. "Are you all right?" Lydia replied hastily, "Yes." She put on a smile. "Hello there. Emerald." Bhaskar adjusted his glasses, a hint of confusion in his tone. "Excuse me, Instructor Lydia, are you all right?" Lydia froze on the spot. A nosebleed quietly started. Her mind went blank. She waved her hands frantically. "I'm Fina. My nose has been a little inflamed lately, so it bleeds often. It'll stop on its own soon anyway. Don't worry." Bhaskar's expression didn't relax. "It's not that. Your complexion." Lydia's body jolted. "I have training, so I'll be going." She turned and left, her steps unsteady. Lydia's cheeks flushed. "I'm so embarrassed. I should have just greeted him like usual. Every time I run into Mr. Bhaskar, but it gets more and more embarrassing." Her pupils suddenly contracted. "Am I a little dizzy?" Lydia covered her nose, blood seeping through her fingers. "What's happening to me? This never happened at the old training center. Is it just because I'm too tired?" Her body swayed, and the documents slipped from her arms. "No, I need to rest for a bit." Her vision went black, and her body fell stiffly. The documents scattered like snowflakes. Lydia lay on the cold ground, her cheeks stained with blood from her nose. Her consciousness sank into darkness. What on earth is happening to me? Sunlight filtered through the leaves, dappling the Duke. He was leaning against Carson, resting with his eyes closed. Footsteps approached from a distance. The Duke's eyes snapped open. Carson's golden vertical pupils dilated in alarm. A dragon trainer bowed. "Good afternoon, Your Grace." The Duke closed his eyes. He spoke slowly, his voice laced with a hint of laziness. "You're late." Carson suddenly pushed himself up, letting out a low growl. The Duke looked at him in confusion. "What's wrong with you, Carson?" Carson suddenly let out a deafening roar. The Duke's expression froze instantly. He vaulted onto the dragon's back, his movements as swift as the wind. The man and dragon shot towards the sky. The Duke held on tightly to Carson. What's gotten into him? He's never been like this before. The Duke's gaze swept over the ground below. His pupils contracted sharply. Lydia was lying motionless in the middle of the courtyard. Carson swooped down and landed on the ground. The Duke leaped off and took Lydia into his arms. "Instructor Lydia." Lydia's hand hung limply, unresponsive. The Duke held her tighter, his eyes filled with anxiety. "Lydia." Carson let out an impatient roar, urging him on. The Duke's eyes regained their composure. "Healer. I have to get her to a healer." In the infirmary, footsteps were hurried and heavy. The healers rushed over at the sound, their faces filled with alarm. The Duke's voice was cold and urgent. "Instructor Lydia has fainted." Carson found her and brought her back. "Examine her immediately." The healers didn't dare to delay and hurried forward. "Yes, Your Grace." The Duke stood to the side, his hands clenched, his gaze locked on the unconscious Lydia. The healer finished the examination and breathed a sigh of relief. The Duke took a step forward. "How is she?" The healer replied, "It's exhaustion from overwork." The Duke repeated the words. "Exhaustion from overwork." The healer nodded. "Yes, these are typical symptoms of overexertion. It seems she's been pushing herself too hard. If not for her strong constitution, that she would have collapsed long ago." Lydia lay quietly on the bed, traces of blood still on the tip of her nose. "She needs to rest well for a while." The Duke looked at the healer. "How long does she need to rest?" The healer's expression was serious. "That depends on Instructor Lydia's condition. She'll need at least a week of complete rest. Besides, Instructor Lydia is the only licensed instructor in the ducal territory. It won't be easy to fill her position." The Duke's voice cut off the healer. "Nonsense. Instructor Lydia has only been here for a few months." The healer trembled. "Yes." The Duke strode away. "When she wakes up, she will definitely insist on working." "Stop her." Tell her it's my order. She won't be able to refuse. The healers whispered among themselves. That's the first time I've ever seen that expression on His Grace's face. Well, Instructor Lydia is the only exclusive instructor in the territory. Of course he'd be worried. The Duke leaned against a wall alone, covering half his face with his hand. A flash of pain crossed his eyes. The only licensed instructor. Lydia's image appeared in his mind. I know she has an extremely strong sense of responsibility, but even knowing that, I couldn't say anything. His fist suddenly clenched. Carson's head poked in through the window, letting out a low whimper. The Duke walked over and gently stroked Carson, his scales warm. You were worried too, weren't you? The instructor will be fine. He whispered to Carson, Lydia, that she'll be fine. You have to be fine. Sunlight cast dappled shadows through the sheer curtains. Lydia lay in bed, the warm sun brushing against her cheek. She let out a soft hum, her eyelids fluttering slightly. Lydia slowly opened her eyes, her consciousness still a bit hazy. The ceiling feels a little unfamiliar. I think I thought the same thing last time. A healer walked in carrying a tray. Ah, you're awake. Lydia pushed herself up, looking around. Where am I? The healer explained. This is the infirmary of the Albarant ducal territory. His Grace found you after you fainted and brought you here. Lydia was stunned. I fainted? Fragments of memory flooded her mind. I had just finished organizing the practice exams for the apprentice instructors and was on my way to the afternoon training. No, this isn't the time to be thinking about this. She threw back the covers and tried to get out of bed in a panic. I haven't handed over my work yet. Things must be a mess now. A hand in a black glove pressed down on her shoulder. She slowly looked up. The Duke's face came into view. The Duke looked at the healer. Is the instructor fully recovered? The healer replied that she must still be dizzy. Lydia was forcefully picked up by the Duke, her body stiffening. The Duke carried her towards the bed. Lydia struggled. Can't he be a little more flexible? The Duke's voice was cold and hard. You can't be foolish enough to think that fainting this time was a small matter, can you? Ive investigated. You've been working overtime, helping the apprentices prepare for their qualification exams. You also took over Luila's corrective training. Lydia's face grew paler. The Duke continued. Not only that, while being in charge of Carson and Emerald, you've also been looking after the work of other instructors. When did you ever rest? Lydia was speechless. Her head lowered involuntarily. I thought I had rest enough. I didn't know I would faint. Everything around her plunged into darkness. Why did it suddenly get dark? Carson's head filled the entire window. Lydia froze on the spot, her mind. That went blank. She cried out in shock. The healer also looked astonished. Carson's huge body, his tail wagged excitedly in the courtyard. He let out a joyful shriek. Lydia, she got out of bed. All right. You were really worried about me, weren't you? Carson let out a satisfied growl. The healer shouted at the Duke, Your Grace, how could you bring a dragon here? The Duke's face was calm, as if it had nothing to do with him. I can't handle Carson's temper. Lydia hugged Carson's head, a gentle smile on her face. Knowing Carson, he must have caused a huge scene on the way here, right? The healer stomped her foot in frustration. Instructor, don't you sympathize with him? Lydia said, it's just overwork. If His Grace hadn't brought him, we might have been in trouble. Carson purred contentedly, rubbing his head against Lydia. The healer's tone was serious. Instructor, if you don't rest properly, you'll have to stay in the infirmary even longer. Lydia looked horrified. I don't want that. A smile touched the corner of the Duke's mouth. You say that, but in your heart, you're happy the dragon is here, aren't you? Lydia, having been seen through, blushed slightly. Ha, you found me out. The healer held her forehead, looking helpless. Before more people see him, hurry up and send him back. The Duke cleared his throat. All right, I will. Carson's claws gripped the window frame, making a dull, thudding sound. Lydia quickly tried to soothe him. No, Garson, if you keep pushing like that, the house will collapse. That person from before will come back and scold us. Carson stopped moving. The atmosphere froze. Lydia lowered her head. She cleared her throat. I'll take good care of myself from now on. It's great to see Carson, but Duke, you were too reckless just now. With your status, you could have coaxed him into waiting in the enclosure. The Duke's gaze was sharp. Have you forgotten how Carson went berserk the last time I made him rest? Lydia retorted. With that one experience, it shouldn't have been hard to calm him down this time. The Duke's tone was unquestionable. Precisely because it happened once, Carson's reaction would only be more intense. Lydia was speechless. She suddenly let out a cry. The Duke was instantly alert. What's wrong? Lydia's face was deathly pale. She suddenly remembered something. Those documents I organized. The Duke looked at her in disbelief. You're still worried about that now? Lydia retorted emotionally. They're important. Do you know how much effort I put into organizing them? The Duke's voice was calm and steady. If you're referring to those documents, I've already picked them up and given them to Instructor Bruce. He's studying them now. Lydia breathed a sigh of relief. Thank heavens. She held her forehead. What can I do? I'm the only qualified instructor in the duchy. Besides, it's not like I'm completely unaware of the duchy situation. We can't hire more instructors, can we? The Duke's tone became stern. You're not reflecting at all. It sounds like you want to faint again. Then we'll increase the number of instructors in the ducal house. Lydia was incredulous. Are you serious? The Duke turned and walked towards the door, his back resolute. I understand your concerns, but that's not something you need to worry about. Stop troubling yourself with unnecessary things. Focusing on your recovery and resting is how you can help. Lydia sighed helplessly. I really can't tell if you're worried about me or scolding me. She lowered her eyelids, just about to say thank you. 1 week later, Carson was lying on the ground, letting out an irritated growl. His huge body writhed restlessly. The Duke sat beside him. You know, Instructor Lydia can only come back when she's fully recovered. Carson shot up, letting out a deafening roar. The Duke soothed him. I know you miss her, but if you go looking for her, you'll only slow down her recovery. What we do then? Carson laid down dejectedly, whimpering. Ever since I took over Carson's care again, time has become incredibly tense. Without Instructor Lydia, I don't know how I managed this enormous workload before. I'm not the only one who feels her absence. Durna, who is undergoing training with Luila, had to pause her training until Lydia returns. This was only natural. However, she still hasn't overcome the trauma of being attacked by Luila. The progress she was able to make. That was entirely thanks to Lydia. Without a dedicated instructor, not only the other training, but even Luila's care has fallen back into the hands of the apprentice instructors. The situation at the training center is just as bad. It's as if a solid core pillar has disappeared, leaving everything adrift and precarious. Instructor Lydia has only been here for a few months. Everything has just returned to how it was before. The Duke looked down at the documents. What a ridiculous thought. I don't want to admit it, but the impact of Lydia's absence is far greater than I imagined. Far beyond my expectations. But I have no intention of changing my mind. Because Instructor Lydia needs to rest. Even if it means increasing the burden on others, her recovery is the top priority. Because she is the only qualified instructor in the duchy who truly cares for the dragons and is not swayed by others. The Duke stood up. Emise here. I should go see her. Carson peeked out from behind the Duke's legs, letting out a wary growl. The Duke turned to leave. No, you'll only disturb the instructor if you go. It's because the instructor is stuck in the infirmary. This is troubling me. I never knew she was so capable. It feels like I've been taking advantage of her. That's why my chest feels so heavy, as if something is pressing down on it. As long as she recovers quickly, I won't feel this way anymore. Yes, that must be it. The Duke stopped abruptly. His gaze froze. Lydia was crouching on the ground, interacting intimately with Emerald. Her smile was bright. The Duke rushed forward and grabbed Lydia's wrist. Why is the instructor, who's supposed to be in the infirmary, out here? Bhaskar stepped forward. Your Grace, you're here. The Duke's tone was calm. Yes, I just finished some business and was on my way. His voice was bone-chillingly cold. Why is a patient outside? Lydia broke out in a cold sweat. Why is he always like this to me? What did I do wrong? She spoke up. Your Grace, the healer, gave me permission to come out for a walk. The Duke was incredulous. The healer gave permission? His eyes were dark with disbelief. Lydia's tone was urgent. Why won't you believe what I'm saying? Bhaskar spoke up. It's not good for a patient to stay indoors all the time. The healer knows this, which is why she gave permission. The Duke snorted. With a dragon here, how can the instructor possibly rest peacefully? Lydia hugged Emerald tightly. I finally get to see a dragon again. I feel so much better. Don't take him away from me. The Duke watched this scene, his expression complex. Nonsense. He sighed. He softly called for Bhaskar. Bhaskar responded, Yes, Your Grace. The Duke gave an order. I'll send guards to you. For now, leave Emerald with Instructor Lydia. Lydia heard this and whipped her head around. What? She repeatedly shook her head. Your Grace, there's no need for that. She explained with a smile, Emerald can't be away from Mr. Bhaskar. What I mean is, I'd like to spend a little more time with Emerald. The Duke's voice drifted over. So, you want to stay with Bhaskar? Lydia froze. Yes, that's right. Why does that sound so strange? The Duke's face instantly darkened. He gritted his teeth. Bhaskar, escort Instructor Lydia back to the infirmary. Bhaskar was stunned. What? But Your Grace. The Duke's tone was unquestionable. If you don't accept my offer, then there's no other way. The confinement period will just have to be extended. Lydia exclaimed, Your Grace. Bhaskar tried to smooth things over. Instructor Lydia has only been out for 10 minutes. The Duke's gaze sharpened. Bhaskar, are you defying my orders? Bhaskar placed a hand on the Duke's shoulder. Your Grace. His tone was calm. Staying in bed all the time is not good for the body. That's why the healer allowed her to come out. Besides, if you don't speak up, no one will know what you're really thinking. If you want something, you should just say it directly. The Duke sat at his desk. A knock sounded at the door. Without looking up, he said, Come in. Bhaskar entered the room, followed by the dragon beast Emerald. He bowed slightly. My apologies. Instructor Lydia is very fond of Emerald. The Duke asked, How is the matter I entrusted to you coming along? Bhaskar placed a stack of documents on the desk. Your Grace, as you know, it's very difficult to find trustworthy instructors, especially since the ducal house needs a large number. Investigating their backgrounds is even harder. The Duke's fingers tapped on the desk. His tone was firm. Even so, we must increase the number of instructors. We can't maintain the status quo forever. Thanks to Instructor Lydia laying the groundwork, now is the time to move forward. Bhaskar was thoughtful. I understand, but we must admit Instructor Lydia is exceptionally talented. Merely holding a license doesn't mean one can achieve such results in a short time. discovering Instructor Lydia at the training center back then was like finding a diamond in the desert. The Duke rested his chin in his hand. I know, I'm not asking others to reach your level. A slight smile played on his lips. What I want are people who can assist Instructor Lydia. Boskar's gaze was sharp. Is that the only reason? The Duke froze. What? Boskar's voice was calm and firm. I said it before. If you don't speak up, no one will know what you're really thinking. Especially when that person is Instructor Lydia. The Duke whipped his head around. What do you mean by that? Boskar leaned forward, his tone serious. As an old friend, I'll just say this. Don't wait until it's too late and you have regrets. Be honest from the start. The Duke turned his face away, a cold sweat trickling down. I don't know what you're talking about. Boskar chuckled lightly. Since you say you don't know, you probably do know. The Duke's gaze sharpened. Are you messing with me? Boskar's smile didn't fade. Who knows? Do you think I'm messing with you? If you had said it was for her health, Instructor Lydia would have accepted immediately. In that case, you wouldn't have shown up in the garden. At that time, it clearly looked like you were searching all over for Instructor Lydia. Am I wrong? The Duke slammed the table. Just as you said, a diamond found in the desert must be cherished. Stop talking nonsense. You know I'm doing all this for the sake of the ducal house. Boskar narrowed his eyes slightly. He thought of a place that was the cleanest and had the fewest connections. This place was Asha, where Instructor Lydia came from. The training center. The Duke stood at the window, gazing into the distance. The Asha Training Center. Boskar continued his analysis. Among the training centers run by the Asha Empire, it's relatively clean. Of course, the director did accept a bribe from Count Harris, but the Count was only seeking convenience for his third son and didn't cross any lines. According to imperial law, training centers established for the public good can only graduate a fixed number of instructors each year. So the number of people we can bring in is limited. This is a necessary regulation to maintain the quality of training. The Duke said, I owe the director a few favors. Let's start with the Asha Training Center. Boskar immediately responded, all right, I'll go investigate the instructors at Asha and report back to you. The Duke added, when we visit the Asha Training Center, Instructor Lydia will accompany us. Remember that. Boskar placed his hand on his chest and bowed slightly. Understood. The door opened softly. Boskar was thoughtful. Actually, there's no need to bring Instructor Lydia along at all. He's just not being honest with himself. The problem is, he doesn't seem to know why he's doing this. It looks like Instructor Lydia is in for a tough time. 5 days later, Lydia opened her arms and called out loudly to Carson. Carson responded excitedly with a joyful roar. Lydia was fully recovered. She hugged Carson's neck tightly. Carson purred in his throat. Lydia winked playfully. Saw thee. I didn't mean to suddenly ignore you. You're the one who found me, right? Thank you. Seeing someone you know collapse in a pool of blood must have terrified you. After we reunited, my attitude wasn't the same as before either. You must have been very anxious. So now, I should let you be spoiled a little. It would be too cruel to be so strict with Carson at a time like this. Lydia softly called Carson. Carson let out a low growl, as if asking a question. Lydia showed a mischievous smile. How about we fly together for the first time in a while? Carson's eyes lit up instantly. Lydia vaulted onto the dragon's back, gripping the reins tightly. She let out an excited scream. She cheered in the wind. Let's go. Carson stuck out his tongue, roaring with excitement, and carried her up into the clouds. The Duke stepped onto the grass, his footsteps light. He looked up at the sky, watching the figures of the person and the dragon. Carson landed steadily. Lydia jumped lightly off the dragon's back. Your Grace. The Duke crossed his arms, his tone holding a hint of reproach. I appreciate your dedication to your work, but I hope you remember that you were just discharged from the infirmary. Lydia responded with a smile. It was just a light flight around. Nothing serious. The Duke's eyebrow twitched. I'm not sure the healer would agree with your definition of light. Lydia turned her face away, a mischievous curve on her lips. I know it probably wasn't light, but if you tell me to stop, I'll stop. The Duke looked away, his tone softening. What I mean is, please be careful not to overexert yourself. Lydia stated calmly, I'm not overexerting myself. In fact, after not flying for so long, it feels pretty good. The Duke said, for the time being, I will personally feed Carson. You just need to focus on training. Lydia tried to object, but the Duke's voice became cold and firm. This is an order. The same goes for the other dragons you're in charge of. Find other dragon trainers to handle the feeding. You only need to supervise the training. That's all for today. You may go back. I'll handle the rest. Lydia's face instantly darkened. Her fists clenched. Carson, we're going home. Carson let out a confused growl. Lydia announced, we've flown long enough. It's time to go back. Carson growled in dissatisfaction. The atmosphere instantly froze. The Duke suddenly spoke. Lydia. Dragon trainer Lydia turned abruptly. Yes, Your Grace. The Duke crossed his arms, his gaze fixed on the distance. I'm planning a trip to the Imperial capital soon. Lydia was completely confused. So suddenly? She gave him a suspicious look. Is that so? Why are you telling me this? The Duke explained. Do you remember? We talked about hiring more dragon trainers for the ducal house. I plan to go to the Imperial capital for that purpose. I'd like you to accompany me. Lydia's pupils contracted. Me? The Duke explained. I need an advisor. Traveling together is the best way to assess each other's abilities. Of course, Carson will come along too. That way you can also look after him. If time permits, you probably want to visit your family too. Lydia asked, when are we leaving? The Duke replied, in 2 weeks. Until then, focus on resting and recovering. Be in your best condition. Lydia clasped her hands together, her eyes shining. I'll recover as quickly as possible. Please don't worry. I also need to prepare snacks and toys for my younger brothers and sisters. And a gift for the director. The Duke watched her excited state. Go. Get ready. Time flew by. Lydia wanted to help others study for the qualification exam, but was chased out. She wanted to feed the dragons, but was stopped in a panic by others. She could only spend her days awkwardly. Lydia put her hands on her hips. There's no need to treat me like I'm fragile. Bruce said, you just fainted, saying that isn't very convincing. Lydia mused, thanks to the forced rest, my body has recovered even better than before. The Duke scrutinized her. It seems you've recovered well. Then let's depart. Is everything packed? Lydia, with her bag on her back, smiled brightly. Yes, I'm ready. Wait, why do I have to ride in the same carriage as you? I'm a dragon trainer. I need to monitor Carson's condition at all times. The Duke's voice came from the front. You can observe through the carriage window. No matter what you say, I will make sure you ride with me. Do I need to remind you again? Your body hasn't fully recovered. You can't overexert yourself. Lydia's cheeks flushed. But still, inside the carriage, Lydia and the Duke sat facing each other. The atmosphere was awkward. Lydia looked desperate. He's my employer. How can I refuse his orders? But sitting face to face like this, who can relax? It's too uncomfortable. She secretly raised her eyes and looked out the window. Carson flew calmly, keeping pace with the carriage. The joint training hadn't even started, yet he was surprisingly composed. Before I was hired, he must have traveled back and forth between the imperial capital and the various training centers countless times. He must be used to this kind of travel by now. Lydia leaned against the window. As long as Carson is okay, that's all that matters. So cute. But now the problem is me. Am I really going to travel all the way to the imperial capital like this? I'm about to suffocate. I'd rather ride my own dragon. The Duke's gaze shifted from his documents. If Lydia felt uncomfortable, I was planning to arrange another carriage for the return trip. He looked across. Lydia was leaning against the window, fast asleep. Sunlight streamed through the window, falling on her peaceful, sleeping face. The Duke looked at the sleeping Lydia. It seems that won't be necessary now. But in that position, her neck will suffer. I specifically used my divine power to warm the carriage for her. I can't let her be uncomfortable anymore. The Duke reached out and gently adjusted Lydia's posture. The wheels rolled over a stone, causing a jolt. The Duke held the window with one hand and steadied Lydia with the other. He looked down at Lydia, sleeping peacefully in his arms, his gaze softening. Lydia hummed softly in her sleep, unconsciously snuggling into the Duke's embrace. The Duke's hand rested lightly on her shoulder, his fingertips twitching slightly. Lydia let out a contented hum. The Duke froze. He abruptly pushed Lydia away. Lydia woke with a start, her eyes still sleepy. Your Grace? The Duke's tone was calm. The carriage seemed to hit something. I was afraid you would fall, so I caught you. Lydia yawned. Thank you. The Duke, with his back to her, said in a steady voice, we're almost there. Pull yourself together. Lydia responded in a small voice. Yes. She looked outside. The carriage was entering a magnificent city. It's been a while. Lydia stood on the street with her bag, looking lost. Are we planning to go to the training center? The Duke's voice came from behind her. Did we not mention it? This is the Asha Training Center. Don't you like it? Lydia forced a stiff smile. It's not that I don't like it. It's just, this is where I used to work. The Duke explained, we don't necessarily have to recruit trainers from here. But this place is directly managed by the Empire, so it's relatively clean. Lydia looked indignant. There's a director here who takes bribes. And you call this clean? The Duke's tone was flat. Compared to other places, it is clean. If you want to hear about them, I can easily give you several examples of filthy training centers. Lydia immediately about waved her hands. No, thank you. She turned. Then I'll go in first and get Carson under control. The Duke nodded in response. As you wish. Lydia walked towards Carson, gently stroking his side. She soothed him softly. Calm down, okay? A voice called out, who's this? Lydia looked up, confused. Melissa came running, waving her hand. Lydia responded with pleasant surprise. Melissa rushed over. Long time no see. How've you been? You look a little thinner. Lydia replied with a smile. I've been doing well. Melissa and the man beside her suddenly froze. Their gazes went past Lydia's shoulder. Welcome to the Asha Training Center, Your Grace. The Duke's figure appeared behind her. He gave a slight nod. Melissa extended her hand. The director is waiting for you. I'll show you the way. The Duke gave an order. Lydia, trainer, first settle Carson in the temporary enclosure, then go to the director's office. Lydia bowed slightly. As you command, Your Grace. She watched the Dukes departing back. You haven't changed a bit. Lydia walked alone down the corridor of the training center. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled shadows. It really has been a long time. Her eyes flickered. Right? Why do you tell me to go to the director's office? Isn't it enough to just manage Carson? A voice called out, Lydia. Lydia stopped dead in her tracks, her body stiff. That annoying voice. Thompson. Thompson held his forehead, looking shocked. Why are you here? Lydia looked at him expressionlessly. Then why are you here? Weren't you expelled from the Asha training center? I heard you needed 6 months to recover. Discharged so soon? Have 6 months passed already? Thompson sneered, his tone arrogant. Who gave you the nerve to speak to a nobleman in that tone? Lydia looked at him coldly. Sorry, I forgot. After being expelled, you're no longer a trainer, but the youngest son of some noble family. Thompson flew into a rage. This wench dares to be so rude to anyone. Did you use your womanly charms on the Duke to act so arrogantly here? You dropped the act as soon as you saw the Duke. He crossed his arms, a mocking look on his face. Looks like you had a lot of fun. After all, you went to the illustrious house of Duke Albarant. No wonder you're back at the training center now. It seems things didn't go so well with the Duke. Thompson's smile was greasy. He sized up Lydia. She's an uncultured wild girl, but her face and figure are not bad. In that case, I could take her under my wing personally. He moved closer to Lydia. As for her rebellious side, I'll just have her fix it herself. I don't mind a little bit of rebellion. Thompson's hand reached for Lydia's waist. Lydia spoke coldly. You're not the eldest son who will inherit the Count's title. Besides your noble blood, you're good for nothing. What else can you get? Nothing but hardship. That's all. Thompson looked astonished. What? Lydia's tone was icy. You talk as if you're so great, but entrusting my future to an idiot like you would be the real waste. A good-for-nothing who only shines because of his family's name. Don't be like a dog in heat. Instead of doing this, you should be honing your skills as a trainer. Then you might actually achieve something. Thompson's face twisted in anger, his teeth grinding. He let out a suppressed growl. Are you crazy? This madwoman. He swung his hand violently. Lydia closed her eyes. Thompson let out a scream of pain. Lydia opened her eyes. Blood splattered. The Duke's eyes were cold, filled with killing intent. His voice was as low and cold as ice. Who do you think you're laying a hand on? Blood dripped from his knuckles. Lydia stood quietly, her face calm. Harris. The Count's mouth fell open in terror. Your Grace. The Duke's gaze sharpened. Count Harris, be quiet. He dared to lay a hand on House Albarant's exclusive trainer. And in my absence, he didn't hesitate to insult me. Unless he's the family heir, his life is worthless. I expect you to repay the insult to me with his life. What do you say, Count? Count Harris trembled. The crisp sound of a slap echoed through the hall. He had struck Thompson across the face. You useless fool. You can't even do a trainer's basic job. You should at least have some sense. How dare you bring shame to the family? Thompson clutched his reddened, swollen cheek. His father, Count Harris, was furious. Shut up. From this day forward, you are no longer my son. Thompson's pupils contracted sharply. The Duke's voice drifted over faintly. Do you think doing this will save your youngest son's life? Count Harris dropped abruptly to his knees, his body pressed against the cold floor. Your Grace, I beg you to spare his life. I have already cast that fool out of the family. So I beg you. The Duke planted his sword in the ground. It must seem quite amusing to you. Do you think such aimless groveling will get you out of this predicament? You seem to have a grave misunderstanding. Today, I must correct that misunderstanding. He held the sword to Count Harris's neck. Count Harris let out a wretched scream. Lydia watched the scene in horror. She rushed forward. Your Grace, Duke Albarant, I'm Fine. The Duke turned his head. Trina Lydia. This is a matter of a noble's dignity. Lydia said, I understand. But right now, that man is no different from a commoner. From now on, Thompson will experience the consequences with his own body. Thompson sat slumped on the ground, his face ashen. A flicker of unease crossed Lydia's face. The Duke noticed her trembling hand. He withdrew his sword. The trainer is truly magnanimous. But then he slammed his foot down on Thompson, grinding him into the ground. We must be clear. No matter how you verbally belittle Trainer Lydia, it will not make you any nobler. Remember this, and never appear before Trainer Lydia again. If I hear news of you appearing again, his eyes turned to ice. Next time, it won't be your hand that goes flying. The Duke walked ahead. Trina Lydia. Lydia was slightly startled. Yes, Your Grace. The Duke questioned, why did you stand there and listen to that kind of talk? Lydia lowered her eyes. Because there was no need for a pointless conflict. The Duke's voice held a trace of disbelief. Even after hearing such insulting words, Lydia answered calmly. After all, I am a commoner, and Thompson is the youngest son of Count Harris. What commoner would dare to defy a noble? The Duke was furious. You are Albarant, the exclusive trainer of the ducal house. Did you think that title carries no weight? Why did you stop me from punishing the one who dared to tarnish the ducal house's honor? Lydia clasped her hands in front of her. It is precisely because I am the ducal house's exclusive trainer that I stopped you. The Duke was stunned. What? Lydia continued to explain. Punishment is deserved, but excessive punishment will only harm the ducal house. We don't need to make more enemies right now. He got angry for me. He punished that person for me. Of course, I was happy, even a little jealous. After all, it's something a commoner like me could never do. But there has to be a limit to everything, because the Duke must rise above personal feelings. I know you must be uncomfortable being involved in this over a mere trainer, but Thompson has already been cast out of his family and lost his protection. That punishment is enough. The Duke listened, turning his head, his expression subtle. Thompson has lost his stable job and been abandoned by his family. The road ahead will be very difficult. This circle is surprisingly small. Rumors about Thompson will spread immediately. Lydia tapped her chin thoughtfully with her index finger. Unless he has outstanding talent to compensate for his terrible personality. But he doesn't. The Duke said, "What did you just say?" Lydia looked up. "This circle is smaller than you think. What Thompson did will spread quickly. No one will hire him again." The Duke shook his head. "Not that." Lydia's mind raced. "Could it be something about me?" She began, "I'm grateful that you value me, but I am ultimately a commoner. You are an unmarried, eligible nobleman. It wouldn't be good for rumors to spread about you being involved with a commoner. Even if he spouted nonsense to slander me, he would have to be careful. After all, reputation is important to nobles." Lydia looked confused. "Wait, so that's not the reason? Did I say something wrong? What was it?" She spoke hesitantly, "Your Grace." The Duke turned to the side. "What is it?" Lydia said, "Thank you." The Duke's eyes flickered. Lydia continued, "I should have thanked you first. I'm sorry for the delay. I often had unpleasant conflicts with Thompson, even though I didn't want to. For the sake of the ducal house, I don't regret stopping you, but I'm still very grateful to you." The Duke turned and walked away. Anyone would have been angry in that situation. He insulted our ducal house's exclusive trainer. You know what an exclusive trainer means in the ducal territory. Lydia suddenly remembered something. "Oh, right. I came to the training grounds because I fainted." The Duke said, "That guy also said things he shouldn't have. It was only natural to punish him. So you don't need to thank me. If you're truly grateful, then help me choose a new trainer." Lydia was taken aback. "Oh, of course, Your Grace. But why is he walking so fast? It's almost like he's running away. What's wrong with him?" The tips of the Duke's ears were bright red. Lydia saw the redness and suddenly realized something. Could it be he's shy? After all, this is the world of a novel. Lydia's romantic fantasy began to unfold. The Duke, dressed in fine clothes, lightly touched his cheek with the back of his white-gloved hand. His cheeks were flushed, his gaze averted. "It's not because of you." Lydia covered her mouth, stifling a laugh. "If I were the heroine, I would definitely find him cute right now, and my heart would flutter." Lydia's expression became calm again. "But if I think about it rationally, what reason would the Duke have to act like that towards me? The Duke and I have a purely professional relationship, a dry relationship without any personal feelings. Maybe it's not shyness, but annoyance at having to waste time selecting a trainer. That's more realistic." Lydia stopped walking. "I must choose a trainer as soon as possible to avoid getting into trouble." The Duke suddenly spoke. "What kind of trainer do you think we need?" Lydia was startled. Considering the current state of the ducal house, its foundation is not yet stable. "We need someone who can handle various types of dragons, not a specialist who only excels with one type." The Duke listened intently. "Is there a trainer who fits that description?" Lydia answered with certainty. "At the Asha Training Center, there's a trainer named Melissa. She is observant, sharp, and meticulous. She has a great reputation for caring for dragons. I think she could be a great help." The Duke nodded. "I see. I'll keep that in mind. Are there any other recommendations?" Lydia's gaze was sincere. "I'm not just saying this because I used to work there. Every trainer there is full of passion, and their skills are superb. I mentioned trainer Melissa first, but that doesn't mean the others are less capable. And there's no guarantee they'll accept an exclusive offer. In the past, being the exclusive trainer for the Agrix Dragon was very attractive, but things are different now." A slight smile played on the Duke's lips. "Weren't you the same? Not wanting to work for me at first?" Lydia was instantly speechless. A voice called out from a distance. "Calm down." Lydia's gaze fell on the blonde young man. He was interacting with a green dragon. Lydia's eyes were focused. "Isn't that Rick? His skills have improved so much in a short time. He was always bullied by Thompson, so he must have been exhausted mentally and physically. But it's different now. He looks much more confident." Rick gently stroked the dragon's jaw. The dragon closed its eyes, looking blissful. Although his training methods are still by the book, and he hasn't developed his own style, it's much better than sticking to the wrong methods. Lydia thought to herself, maybe someone like Rick is exactly what the ducal house needs. The ducal house must move forward. We can't be satisfied with just increasing the number of dragons. We need to pull ahead of other territories. In Rick's current state, he could quickly master my techniques. And since he recently got his certification, he could also help the other apprentice trainers learn. The Duke crossed his arms, his gaze deep as if weighing something. At an orphanage under the sun, a voice called out everyone. 3 children were playing by a sandpile. They looked up. Sister Lydia. Lydia led a dragon horse, a brilliant smile on her face. The children rushed over excitedly. Lydia held up a hand. "Wait, let me tie up the dragon horse first." Then she opened her arms for a hug. The 3 children threw themselves into her arms, knocking her to the ground. "Sister, you just sent a letter saying you'd visit often." Lydia lay on the ground. "Sorry, I've been too busy with work. I only just got some time off." She forced a sheepish smile. "I brought gifts. Go inside and open them." One child cheered and ran off. "Go tell everyone." The director extended her hand, her smile kind. "You're here." Lydia took her hand, smiling brightly. "I'm back." They held hands, smiling at each other in the warm light. The director said softly, "Just a moment ago, Duke Albarand himself came to visit. Lydia's smile froze. What? The Duke came to the orphanage? Why? The director asked with concern, how is work? Lydia replied, it's tough but very meaningful. The only downside is that I can't come as often as before. The director smiled gently. That's nothing to worry about. Everyone feels sad when they leave home. It's a necessary part of becoming independent. Lydia said, still, I hope you'll take this. She handed over a heavy money pouch. The orphanage is still lacking many things. It's not much, but I hope it can help. The director's gaze was firm. Don't worry about us. This is money you worked hard for. Keep it for yourself. Lydia said, I don't need much money. And it's not like I saved this by starving myself. I can't come to the orphanage often now, so I want to do my part. The director turned away. You don't have to do this. Lydia said, then I'll donate this money somewhere else. From the moment I put it in this bag, it was no longer my money. The director sighed in resignation, putting a hand to her forehead. Lydia, I really don't know who you inherited this stubborn streak from. The Duke has started sponsoring us again, so it's really okay. Lydia froze. What? The Duke is sponsoring the orphanage? Before, it was just to hire me. Why now? The director clasped her hands, smiling with relief. He said he was very grateful for your excellent work and hoped the ducal house could continue to employ you, so he wanted to help. Of course, it could also be out of goodwill. After all, there are many generous people in the world. Lydia was puzzled. But why not hand the orphanage over to the royal orphanage in the capital? Her thoughts were in a whirl. Why? What is the reason? The director looked at Lydia. You seem to have a lot on your mind. Lydia waved her hands awkwardly. Sorry, this topic was just so sudden. The director placed her hands on Lydia's shoulders. Don't worry, and don't overthink it. I don't know what the Duke's true intentions are for sponsoring us, but it's something to be grateful for either way. Lydia looked down. That may be true, but the director asked in return, do you think the Duke would sponsor us with malicious intent? I can't say I know the Duke completely, but at the very least, he has never been someone who acts out of malice. Lydia's thoughts drifted. There was that one time he tricked me with a contract. But that wasn't entirely one-sided deception, nor was it meant to harm me. So that probably doesn't count. The director took Lydia's hand. If accepting the sponsorship would harm the children, I would refuse without hesitation. I always feel sorry for not being able to give them more, but that doesn't mean I would put them in danger. If we're lacking something, we'll just make do. Lydia looked up. Director, are you going to the ducal house? The director looked at her gently. Lydia, my child. She gently caressed Lydia's cheek. Adult matters should be handled by adults. Lydia grasped the director's hand. But I'm an adult now, too. The director smiled warmly. Even so, you will always be my child. In a parent's eyes, a child is still a child, even when they're 60. She hugged Lydia tightly. Lydia was confused. What does that mean? The director said, it means you will always be the daughter I'm proud of. So don't worry. Just keep doing what you need to do, just as you always have. The Duke was lying on an armchair. He suddenly opened his eyes. Lydia walked in with a tea tray. Your Grace, have you found a trainer you like? The Duke spoke. Did you have a pleasant holiday? Lydia poured hot tea into a cup. Thanks to you, I had a very comfortable time. The Duke nodded. That's good. You picked up the teacup. I observed them for a few days. To be honest, I want to hire them all. Lydia said, but according to the rules, we can only choose 2 more. The Duke smiled slightly. I've already chosen one. Lydia was a little surprised. You've already chosen? The Duke took a sip of tea. Yes, the trainer you recommended, Melissa, is a good fit. She also gladly accepted the offer. Now there's only 1 spot left. Do you have any other recommendations? Lydia lowered her eyes. I believe the Duke has his own understanding and choice of trainers, but I can't say I wasn't influenced at all. She spoke. What do you think of the trainer, Rick? The Duke was taken aback. Rick? He's nothing special. He's only been a trainer for a short time. Lydia said, that's precisely why I think he's suitable. The Duke asked, puzzled, what do you mean by that? Lydia explained, Rick is a certified professional trainer, but he hasn't formed his own methodology yet. He's still in a growth phase. He needs someone to guide him, to unlock his potential. But such people are rare. Even if they exist, it's hard to hire them to stay, as they often have personal reasons. Lydia looked down. So I think Rick is more suitable for the ducal house. He can grow in the ducal house's way. The Duke put down his teacup. I'll consider it. Lydia spoke hesitantly, Your Grace. The Duke asked calmly, what is it? Lydia took a deep breath. I have something I'd like to say. The Duke's expression grew serious. Is it something important? Lydia forced a smile. It's a personal matter, but it's important. The Duke's gaze. I don't recall you ever seeking me out for a personal matter. Lydia gave an awkward laugh. Who would easily discuss personal matters with their employer? But the Duke's answer is crucial to me. I have to know why he cares about the orphanage. Does he have another motive? I must confirm it. She began, thank you for sponsoring the orphanage. The Duke's movements instantly froze. He turned his head to look at Lydia. You say thank you, but you don't look happy. I saw the orphanage's condition with my own eyes before, which is why I sponsored it. After coming to the capital, I visited again. The situation didn't seem to have improved much, so I donated again. That's all. It was out of nobleman's sense of duty. So you don't need to thank me. Lydia was slightly taken aback. The Duke's gaze pierced through her. But that's not what you're curious about, is it? Trina. Lydia's head snapped up. The Duke spoke slowly. Since you've misunderstood, I'll be frank. I care about you a great deal. Lydia shot up from her chair, leaning back with her hands braced on the sofa. What? The Duke's voice was calm and firm. Is there a problem with valuing a capable exclusive trainer? Lydia's cheeks flushed. Not at all. I just didn't expect that kind of answer. The Duke stood up. During your time at the ducal house, your performance has far exceeded my expectations. I am simply giving my full support to a capable trainer. My only hope is that you will work for the ducal house for a long time. To bury your bones here. Is that clear? Lydia stammered, yes. The Duke started to leave. Then I'll go meet that trainer named Rick now. Lydia covered her burning cheeks with her hands. I completely misunderstood him. Why did I ever doubt him? It's so embarrassing. But in the end, this is the Duke's fault too. He's the one who made me suspicious in the first place. Lydia paused. Wait, what he just said? Wasn't that even more shocking than what I had misunderstood? The carriage jolted along a path through the woods. Lydia leaned back in the carriage, her mind unsettled. Exclamations were heard. It's completely different from before. Such a huge change. Melissa and Rick were pressed against the window, looking at Carson. To train the Agrix dragon to this level in just a few months. Lydia said, but there are still many areas that need improvement. Just because he's not attacking doesn't mean he's fully adapted. Lydia nodded in agreement. That's right. If he's constantly suppressed, he'll explode one day. Lydia said, all right, let's talk more when the others arrive. They say we'll be in the ducal territory soon. Do you all remember the precautions? Melissa nodded. I understand. Rick said, I definitely couldn't have handled it that well. Melissa encouraged him. But this place is really suitable for dragons to live. And the salary is high, isn't it? We've come this far. Let's work hard and earn recognition. Rick nodded. I'll definitely do my best. Lydia smiled with satisfaction. It's great that Melissa and Rick understand the situation in the ducal territory, but I still need to keep a close eye on them. With a command, the main gates opened. The carriage slowly drove in. In any case, I'm now responsible for managing all the trainers in the ducal house. I must handle the relationship with the training center and the apprentices well. If anything goes wrong, the responsibility is all on me. Lydia pushed open the door, a confident smile on her face. I'm back. 2 weeks later. Melissa and Rick have been here for 2 weeks. Although I can't let my guard down yet, the first step seems to be going smoothly. Thanks to the extra hands, I finally have some breathing room. With the free time, I can get to know the Agrix dragon better and prepare for the joint training. The problem is, Lydia sat cross-legged amidst a pile of books, her brow furrowed. There's too little information. Almost none. Bruce approached. I'm sorry. As you know, before the current Duke, there was a 100-year gap in raising Agrix dragons. The records should have been passed down from one exclusive trainer to the next, but they all died, and the records were lost with them. Lydia said, I wasn't hoping for much, but 100 years is no small number. It's normal for some records to be lost. Besides, Agrix dragons are rare to begin with. Perhaps the information was recorded in code or abbreviations. I had hoped for that, but I've searched the entire library and found nothing. In that case, the notes I've written while training and managing Carson might be the only existing records. The problem is there's nothing to compare them to. The only data I have is about Carson. I can't be sure if knowledge applicable to other dragons also applies to Agrix dragons. If only I had the data accumulated over generations. It's a shame it all vanished in an instant. Lydia suddenly clenched the paper in her hand. That damned fool. It's understandable to want to be the head of the house, but why destroy the records of the Agrix dragon? Did he have any idea how precious those things were? If he were still alive, I'd kill him with my own hands. A knock on the door interrupted Lydia's thoughts. The Duke walked in slowly. Yukendir said the preparations are ready. Will the joint training begin? Lydia looked up. It's not ready yet. The Duke leaned down, gently placing his hands on her shoulders. Is there a problem? Lydia quickly waved her hands. I'm physically fine. It's just that something feels off. I've said before that joint training must be conducted with caution to minimize risks. If a conflict breaks out between the dragons, even the trainers would have difficulty controlling it. The Duke said, what if I observe the training personally? Lydia was taken aback. You'll come personally? The Duke said, I can't say for the other dragons, but Carson shouldn't be difficult to control. Lydia pondered. If the Duke's mere presence could control Carson, that would be ideal. She spoke, but that's a last resort. I'll do what I can first. The Duke nodded slightly. Understood. Lydia sighed. The offer is tempting, and Carson does need to be independent of the Duke. She suddenly remembered something. Right, didn't you already fly today? Did something happen? The Duke's gaze flickered away. No, I just wanted to check on the progress of the joint training. He turned and left. Lydia was left stunned. He came all this way just to say that. Couldn't he have sent someone else? Doesn't he have more important things to do? Bruce spoke softly. May I ask what the problem is with the joint training? Lydia looked troubled. Should I be honest? It's more of an intuition. No matter how I think about it, I just feel that Carson isn't fully mature yet. Lydia's fingers tightened on the book. But I can't just say something like that. The new trainers are making everyone nervous. I can't unsettle people with baseless speculation. She answered, I just feel like some parts are incomplete. Like I said, I want to proceed with caution. Bruce nodded. I understand. Lydia hugged the book, a smile returning to her face. For now, I'll focus on training Carson and Luila. I really need to learn more about the Agrix dragon species. Bruce's eyes dimmed. Understood, trainer Lydia. Sunlight pierced through the clouds. Dragon knights soared on their great dragons among the rainbows. Lydia rested her chin in her hand and let out a long sigh. She looked at Carson. Seeing him like this, he really looks like a gentle dragon. It's hard to imagine he's been through so much hardship. Did he survive because he was strong, or did he become strong in order to survive? The Duke's voice suddenly spoke. What do you mean? Lydia looked up. Your Grace, you're here again. The Duke crossed his arms. Come to think of it, you seem to be looking for something in the library earlier. Lydia stood up. Yes, the joint training is approaching. I was hoping to find even a little bit of information about the Agrix dragon, but unfortunately, I've confirmed it again. Those records were lost with the deaths of the exclusive trainers. The Duke's eyes dimmed. Is that so? Lydia was taken aback. Ever since we returned to the ducal territory, hasn't the Duke been coming a bit too often? Is he that free? Lydia rested her chin in her hand, sighing before a mountain of books. This is hopeless. Even if I could reference other species, there's probably no one who has done in-depth research on every single species. Her palm rested on a thick, blue-covered book. But that doesn't mean I can keep postponing the joint training forever. Lydia stood up, holding the book. The Duke came the day before yesterday. The Duke came again yesterday. And he came again today. The Duke keeps coming over. I feel like he's waiting for the joint training. Just one last book. I'll research for a few more days. If I still find nothing, I'll just have to proceed with the joint training as carefully as possible. Lydia's fingers slid across the books. They stopped on one book. She froze. What's this? Just now, one book felt completely different from the others. Could it be this one? Lydia pulled out the book. An ancient tome with a dark brown cover and gold patterns. The description was ordinary, but for some reason, it had a strange, scaly feel. She opened the book. It was blank inside. The title said it was a cookbook, but there was no content inside. This difference between sight and touch. Well, have I felt this before? Lydia's pupils constricted. I remember now. This is Kryllion dragon leather. The leather of a Kryllion dragon has excellent camouflage abilities. This ability persists even without magic. For this very reason, they were once hunted indiscriminately. Now, hunting them is banned across the entire continent. Usually, Kryllion dragon leather is used to make invisibility cloaks or book covers for hiding confidential documents. I never thought I'd see it in person. Lydia swallowed, clutching the book tightly. Since it was hidden so carefully, it means this is no ordinary book. A knock sounded at the door. The Duke didn't look up, his voice steady. Kumin, he continued to review his documents. If there are documents to process, just leave them on the desk before you go. Lydia's voice rang out. Your Grace, I have something to report. The Duke's hand paused. Trina Lydia. What is it so late at night? Lydia walked forward quickly. She placed the ancient tome in front of the Duke. I found this in the library. The Duke looked at the cover, a hint of confusion on his face. Isn't this 300 traditional recipes of the Timil Kingdom? Lydia's eyes burned brightly. Would you like to open it and see? The Duke opened the book, his fingertips brushing over the blank paper. The appearance and the feel are completely different. How did you find this book? Lydia answered that it was purely by chance. I didn't expect it. This book is made of Kryllion dragon leather. The Duke shot to his feet. I must call Durna. He looked at Lydia. I will thank you for your efforts and give you the compensation you deserve. Lydia quickly waved her hands. I didn't bring it for a reward. The Duke's gaze fell upon her. Although the contents have not yet been verified, you have indeed found a valuable book. Your efforts have earned their due compensation. He suddenly changed the subject. Have you been sleeping? Well, lately? Lydia was slightly taken aback. Yes, thank you for your concern. She bowed deeply. I'll take my leave first. The Duke watched her quietly, without responding. Lydia looked up. That startled me. Why was he looking at me like that? Durna took the book from the Duke's hands. This seems to be written with specially treated ink. The Duke crossed his arms. Can you decipher the contents? Durna bowed his head slightly. Yes, I have figured out how the contents are hidden. Please wait a moment. A huge magic circle spread across the floor. The book floated in the center of the magic circle, enveloped in blue energy. The original text on the cover disappeared, replaced by a new word, Agrix. Then a second word appeared, Agrix species. The Duke murmured, Agrix species. The description is simple and clear enough. He opened a page. Inside were illegible, messy scribbles. Is it a code? Durna explained. This book is designed to react only to a specific magic. Only by using that power can the original content be identified. The Duke's eyes sharpened. If it's a special magic, it must be a Grix magic. On the sunny training ground, Carson was lying on the grass. Lydia stood beside him. She turned her head. Your Grace, are you here to inspect Carson's training? The Duke's voice came. Not this time. He softly called, Carson. Carson let out a low growl, as if in response. The Duke gently stroked Carson's jaw. A torrent of magical energy surged out, sweeping across the entire training ground. The Duke stood in the center of the light, holding the ancient book. He spoke. Trina Lydia. Lydia trembled all over. Yes. The Duke handed the book to Lydia. This seems to be something you should see. Lydia took the book. The pages recorded information about the Agrix species, a rare dragon breed that only chooses the ducal family of Albarant. Its knowledge must be passed down from generation to generation. To prevent this accumulated knowledge from being lost due to selfish desires, we used a special ink ground from the hide of an Agrix dragon and the scales of an Agrix dragon. Binding this book with the hide of an Agrix dragon weighs heavily on me, but I pray this knowledge will be passed passed down to future generations. Lydia looked up, her voice trembling slightly. Can I really read this? She hugged the book tightly, as if holding a priceless treasure. The Duke's tone was unquestionable. Of course, you are Carson's trainer and are entitled to read it, but do not show it to anyone. This record is incredibly precious. Lydia's cheeks flushed, her eyes sparkling. She hugged the book tightly. Thank you so much. It is an honor to be able to see this. The Duke touched his own cheek with the back of his hand. So you can make that kind of face, too. Lydia suddenly exclaimed. The Duke came back to his senses. What is it? Lydia's gaze fell on the book. I just find it a little strange. The book says Carson is not yet an adult dragon. Carson yawned, lying lazily in the gazebo, bathed in sunlight. Melissa crouched behind a bush, holding a pair of binoculars. Lydia asked, "How is it going?" Melissa sighed. Normally, he should be near them. Lydia took the binoculars and looked. Although I expected this, it still doesn't feel good. Melissa tilted her head. But why are you in such a hurry to proceed with the connection? Before, the trainer kept putting it off, saying we needed to be cautious. Lydia looked thoughtful. That was when Derna asked, Trainer Lydia, is the difference between a subadult and an adult very important? Lydia nodded. Very important. It's like the difference between a teenager and an adult. Now that it has come to this, we must proceed with the connection training as soon as possible. Like all education, the younger they are, the more effective it is. This is true for humans, and even more so for dragons, whose instincts are stronger. The Duke looked worried. More importantly, what if he becomes an adult? I've heard that some species become more independent after reaching adulthood, thus avoiding connection. Lydia said that's right, but for dragon breeds that choose humans, they usually remain in a subadult state forever, unless the human helps them mature. Of course, this depends on individual nature. In some cases, it's best to keep them as subadults. As for Carson, we can't decide arbitrarily. I will carefully study the materials before the connection is fully established. If I think it's better for him to remain a subadult state, then I will inform you then. Lydia looked tense. After careful consideration, I judged that it would be faster to train him while he's still a subadult. That's why I'm in such a hurry. I don't distrust Melissa, but the Agrix dragon is top secret. It's hard to talk about it openly. Suddenly, a commotion was heard. The dragon horses scattered in panic. Carson, lying in the gazebo, let out a low growl. Lydia observed. I have to correct myself. It's not that they're awkward, but that Carson is completely ignoring them. When we went to the capital, Carson and the warhorses seemed to get along well. I thought the connection would be completed quickly. I was completely wrong. The Duke suddenly appeared. Is that the problem? Lydia let out a cry of surprise. Your Grace. The Duke said, could it be that Carson has become irritable because he's trapped here? Lydia sighed. I don't think so. To Carson, the dragon horses have never been creatures he could be at ease with. They're just beings to be ignored by him. The Duke rested his chin on his hand. Of course, there's subtle differences, but I don't think it's a big problem. Lydia explained, let me give you an example. What does an ordinary person do if they trip over a stone underfoot? The Duke answered, they would move the stone away. Lydia nodded. Exactly. Either they ignore it and walk around it, or they kick it away. The problem is that, to Carson, those warhorses are no different from stones on the roadside. The Duke said, I see. So Carson shouldn't treat them as something to be ignored, but should accept them. Lydia nodded. Precisely. The Duke was thoughtful. If he can't even accept dragon horses, then getting along with other dragons will be even more difficult. It seems this will take a long time. Lydia's eyes were firm. No matter how long it takes, this is a mountain we must climb. I wonder if there's any incense that could help. Would it be recorded in the book? The Duke suddenly spoke. If it's that kind of thing, please wait a moment. Lydia replied, all right. She sat there with a blank look. What? The Duke turned and walked away. Lydia stood up in alarm. Your Grace, that's too dangerous. The Duke walked towards the group of dragon horses. His mere presence made them cringe. The Duke stopped in front of Carson. Carson growled. They seemed to be communicating. Carson let out a questioning cry. The Duke turned and left. He said to Lydia, starting tomorrow, Carson will probably follow the trainer's instructions properly. Lydia spoke in disbelief. What did you say to Carson? How could he? The Duke crossed his arms, his expression indifferent. What I said is not important. What's important is whether Carson follows instructions, isn't it? Lydia was at a loss for words. He has a point, but if he understands immediately with just a word from you, doesn't that mean we're redundant here? The sudden threat of unemployment. The next day, Lydia's expression was one of shock. My goodness, our dragon has changed. Of course, I lit the incense, specially blended for Agrix dragons, but that was just to calm his emotions. Lydia looked grave. For Carson to change so drastically in a single day. They say a dragon that has chosen a human is different, but what on earth did the Duke say to Carson? Lydia smiled brightly. Carson let out a low rumble. Lydia gently hugged Carson. You're such a good boy. Has Carson even learned to accept other dragons? She stroked Carson's scales. He doesn't get sensitive even when I'm with the dragon horses. Since he's doing so well, I should praise him properly. Carson gently nuzzled Lydia's hand with his head as if seeking affection. It's great that things are going smoothly, but for some reason, it feels a little pathetic. My own efforts were so easily surpassed. I agonized over it for so long. And the Duke solved it with a few words. She stood with her hands on her hips. It seems this kind of self-awareness is inevitable. A few days later, Carson lay in the center of the courtyard, surrounded by leisurely dragon horses. A scene of tranquility. Lydia observed carefully with binoculars. It's been the same for several days. Carson's attitude has certainly improved, but I can't shake the feeling that he's not genuinely allowing the dragon horses to be near. The problem isn't solved. This isn't a fundamental fix. He's forcibly enduring it, which means it's bound to explode completely one day. Lydia said to Melissa beside her, "I'm stepping out for a bit." Melissa replied gently, "All right, be careful." Lydia walked alone across the grass, her shadow stretching long in the sunlight. I have to make Carson clearly understand that having other dragons around is not something he needs to endure. Lydia approached, her voice gentle yet firm. "Yes, good boy. Come here, will you?" Lydia cupped a dragon horse's face in her hands, gazing at it gently. "Is this okay?" Carson lay quietly in the distance, watching this scene. Lydia's expression grew complex. Is Carson numb, or is this just the limit of his endurance? I'm not sure. She continued to interact with the dragon horse. A suppressed growl rumbled in Carson's throat. Lydia turned and called his name. "Carson." Carson shot to his feet, letting out a pained roar. A huge shadow loomed over everything. Lydia continued to call out, "Carson." Carson's pupil shrank. Lydia met Carson's gaze, her tone firm. "I am your exclusive dragon trainer. Praising other dragons doesn't mean you are any less precious. I'll let the dragon horses roam free for the sake of your training. If you learn to accept other dragons, you will also be more at ease." Lydia gently stroked Carson. A dragon living in the human world must eventually share its space with other dragons. If Carson can't accept that, he will be the one who suffers the most. Lydia's eyes were resolute. For everyone's sake, and for our own, he must learn to be a little more tolerant. Lydia released her hand. She walked over to the dragon horses again. "I'm not sure if this method will work, but if the Duke's method was effective, as long as Carson can take a step forward like this, I could ask for nothing more." A few days later, the dragon horses huddled together intimately, letting out contented low rumbles. Carson watched from afar, a dissatisfied grumble in his throat. Lydia raised her binoculars, looking at the courtyard below. It seems talking to Carson was effective. Although dragons are intelligent, it's widely believed they can't understand human ways. But for a dragon that has chosen a human, a dragon that has grown up with that human since birth, I clearly see that other possibilities exist. I never thought I would say such things to a dragon, but Carson was persuaded. Lydia asked the Duke during the last joint training, "What did you say to Carson?" The Duke's gaze drifted into the distance. "Nothing special." Lydia said, "I'm grateful for your good intentions, but because of your words, Carson began to forcibly endure the other dragon's provocations. Endurance is not a good thing. Once the right trigger is found, everything he has suppressed will explode. You also know that suppressed things become even more dangerous once they erupt." The Duke was slightly taken aback. Lydia continued, "Thanks to you, I also realized how short-sighted I was. I had only ever trained dragons at the training center. Carson is the first dragon to have chosen a human. There's bound to be constant trial and error. I never thought to try and persuade a dragon. I failed to realize that a dragon that grew up with a human would be different from an ordinary dragon." Lydia bowed her head slightly. "Thanks to you, the world I know has become much broader." She broke into a radiant smile. "Thank you for your help." The Duke looked at her, the corners of his mouth turning up unconsciously. "If that's the case, then that's wonderful.